going to join later in the coming few minutes. So thanks for joining. We are really happy to have you all together for this, I hope, exciting webinar. It actually feels familiar for me to see you. I see that some people I know are in the room, and they were already with us a year and a half ago. And actually, what we're going to do today is to look back at what we did a year and a half ago at our webinar that I had also moderated on the issue of Mediterranean wetlands. And how we've been progressing, but I will give you more details about this in a minute. So while everybody's joining, we have in the room Mireia Bata from MedCities. Hi, Mireia. Maybe you want to.
Hello.
Okay,
everyone.
And we
Good
have
morning.
We have also Gloria Lazaro from Plumber. Maybe you want to wave also, Gloria.
Yes, good morning.
And Mireia and Gloria are going to be our support, let's say, for any technical issue you might have, and also for the questions. So they will take questions from you. Mireia or Gloria, maybe you want to also let us know now the specific instructions for the webinar.
Well, so welcome everyone. And the specific instructions would be like, this is like an open session. So we want you to contribute, to ask, and really to be like collaborative session. So after its speakers, if someone have any questions, you can write on the chat, or you can use the raise your hand, and we will take note of it if you are writing on the chat, or we will let you speak after the speaker, so you can put the questions. If we see that there are so many questions, we maybe do it at the end, but we think that as we would like to be like interactive as much as possible, so we will try to pick all the interesting questions at the time, and so you all can share also your experiences and the content. So welcome you all, and don't hesitate also to write, and if you have any issues, so Gloria and myself are here to help, and have a nice session.
Thank you. Do you have any specific instructions on the Zoom or the netiquette, as you were telling me yesterday?
Yeah, well, the best would be like everybody have like the cable and not Wi-Fi, but well, me myself, I'm in Wi-Fi, so I'm not a good example, but okay, let's try just to, if you have the like speakers or the headphones, that would be nice also to hear each other better, and try to be not in a noisy place if it's possible, and to have like a nice light on your face, because at the end of the session we will take a picture all together. And yeah, that's all by my side. We are trying to share the screen for those speakers who just ask for it, and the others can just share it themselves. And I think that's it. So.
Okay, thanks, Mireia. Just a few more important points to make sure the webinar is a success. So one thing that is important, if you can, is if you could let your camera on throughout the webinar. This really helps engagement, and it also will make our speakers feel less alone and speaking to an empty room. So if you could do this, that would be really good. As Mireia was saying, the webinar is built to allow maximum participation. So really do not hesitate to raise your hand if you have questions, to put questions in the chat, leave messages whenever you want to share something, or if there's a concept that you have not understood, or if you want the speaker to repeat things. It's really important that the webinar is a useful moment for all. The workshop is recorded, and it will be made available and sent to you as a replay in the next few days. We will send you also all the materials, presentations, any report or document that is referred to and that could be useful. Everything will be sent to you. So really now it's all for you to focus on listening and participating. So before we start, I would like to remind that the event is organized by the Interreg Mediterranean Biodiversity Protection Community. This is also known as the NBPC. And the role of NDPC is to raise awareness and catalyze change to protect, conserve, and restore the vital ecosystems and habitats in the Mediterranean region. And the end, as I was saying at the beginning of today's presentations, is to build on the outcomes of the previous webinar that took place during the Ukraine Week 2020. Actually, the session was recorded and it's available online. I don't know if you want to put the link for those of you who were not present. In any case, at the end of this webinar, we had done a video which was summarizing the key points we had, let's say, agreed and discussed. And to give the context and the background for all to be on the same foot to start the webinar today, I suggest that we watch this video now, Mireia, so that you all understand what happened in October 2020, and we all know where we're starting from. Thanks.
Chantal, I'm expected to go.
We're seeing the video now.
Okay.
Wetlands, our natural solution to the biodiversity, water and climate crises. Wetlands are so much more than muddy ponds of mosquitoes. In fact, they're one of the richest ecosystems on Earth and offer a natural solution to the biodiversity, water and climate crises. When healthy, wetlands are home to a huge variety of species. And they provide vital services to humans too, protecting our houses and farmlands from floods and droughts, erosion and waves, keeping our water clean and plentiful, supplying us with food and raw materials, storing up to 20 times more carbon than our forests, and bringing us joy in all kinds of ways. But the tragedy is, we've destroyed more than half of them since the 1970s. And now wetlands are the most degraded ecosystems in the Mediterranean. Agricultural intensification, urban expansion and resource extraction are driving wetland destruction on a huge scale. So what can we do to restore and conserve these vital habitats? That's a question we asked leading experts, and here's what they told us. First, let's tell the world that wetlands are not wastelands. We need to take wetland education into our schools today so our children will stand up for our wetlands tomorrow. Second, we need to get to know them better. Defining, mapping and managing our wetland areas will teach us more about their true value. Third, we need to work together with wetland stakeholders of all kinds. By sharing knowledge and best practices around the Mediterranean, everyone can help to improve wetland governance. So let's get started. We need concrete conservation commitments from our authorities. We need informed, empowered communities. And we need to base all our actions on the latest science. Collaboration is needed at all levels and must include multi-stakeholder engagement across sectors and geographies, and a reliable cluster of independent wetland experts who can advise on operational plans, time schedules and budgets. Proper financial support is equally important. Restoring and conserving our wetlands has to be backed by long-term sustainable finance mechanisms. There are already instruments and networks in place where we can make a start. The European Green Deal, local initiatives and transnational plans of action are all steps in the right direction. But whatever we do, we can't afford to wait. Wetlands are life, and here in the Mediterranean we need them more than ever. Visit our website to find out more about wetlands and join our community by signing our Declaration on Ecosystem-Based Approaches for Biodiversity Protection and Management.
Thank you. Before we jump into checking how things have been moving at the policy, science, and field level, I would like to give the floor to Dania for the official opening of the webinar. Dania is someone that I guess most of you know from this room. But quickly, for those who might not know her, I will give you a few lines of bio. So Dania has 15 years of experience in environmental assessment and management. Her research focuses on ecosystem-based management to nature conservation, applied to nature conservation and biodiversity protection. And she works at the Mediterranean and European levels. The work of Dania supports the implementation of different global and regional directives, such as the CBD, the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands, the EU Biodiversity Strategy to 2030, the Barcelona Convention for the protection of the Mediterranean coastal and marine environment, and a few others. So Dania, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Chantal, and good morning, everyone. Yes, I'm very happy to see quite some known faces, but also newcomers, which is really very interesting, I think. And that's for a reason that I will be mentioning also in these minutes. So yes, I have been the coordinator of this initiative since 2016, and certainly, which is a big community of institutions that focuses mainly on finding ways to protect better biodiversity in the Mediterranean, but also to find some means to conserve ecosystems at different levels more effectively. So this community has been growing, and we are now, in the latest mapping of the institutions that are really committed to finding ways and solutions to these important questions. We're above 350 institutions. That's really very, very, I think, positive. This project will end by the end of this year. So December 2022 is the end of this long initiative, but certainly also we are finding ways to continue the collaboration. So we just submitted before yesterday, hopefully a next 7 years of funding to ensure that these mechanisms continue. I'm mentioning that because back in 2016, we committed to at least provide solutions to certain ecosystems. Certainly wetlands, we believe, is a very important and critical ecosystem that needs support and pushing at all levels. Part of the activities we have done was in the Green Week, EU Green Week in 2020, is to ensure that we have a community that is gathering and committing to support in some steps. And here we wanted to come again before the end of the project to inform about what has been done, but also to show possibilities and changes that would really be needed in the next steps. And here we have a very rich agenda to show as well innovative solutions that are emerging from mainly the very degraded state of wetland ecosystems in the Mediterranean. So just briefly, few points on what has been, what came out of the last event that we held together and what will be presented more in details here are few points on the knowledge part. So we agreed that the knowledge is not relevant at the same somehow level in the whole Mediterranean, and that is a big gap that needed to be tackled. And we will be providing few of the developments that have happened at this scale. We also pushed a bit to understand further what is coming from the policy side that could be supporting that. And here we have again the commitment from several DGs in the EU to inform us a bit what has happened, because there were clear points that would be part of this this new era, I would say, or this new period that will come, building on restoration, building on greening more the practices. So all of this is really essential, and we have clear commitments and clear practical things that will start giving, I think, possibilities for a better future for wetlands. So we will hear this as well. Also on practices side, there were quite some projects that were pushing for mechanisms that would ensure incentivation as well for bigger community, because it's not the problem of wetland stakeholders or wetland link stakeholders only. It's really very wide and goes across all the sectors. So there is a real need for commitment when it comes to local practices. We have several projects that have developed as well some tools on co-management, on participatory approaches that will be tackled. And certainly what is still needed is lots of incentivation to the correct somehow steps in that process. So incentives have not been encouraging a healthy wetland situation. So certainly the Green Deal, but also the commitments toward Ramsar that we will have also here are going in the right direction to reduce incentivation to further degradation of wetlands, and hopefully increase investments in capacity building, in restoration actions and research. I mean, all of this is really required. And certainly we think that it is clearly needed and is still maybe not very clear on how this could be a way forward, is the long-term sustainable finances for this to ensure that action plans and resource management plans have the finance that is needed to the long-term sustainable management of this ecosystem. And certainly we will touch base on that and we will see where we are and hopefully by the end where we are heading to. So happy to have you all, and thank you everyone for joining, and yeah, I hope it will be a fruitful webinar for everyone.
Thank you, Tanya, for these words. Actually, I think what made it work well 2 years ago is that it was really open, and our speakers and participants really took the floor, I would say, in many cases from their hearts more than from their institutional position. And I think it's really time to go beyond sometimes, the different, let's say, beyond the organizations we belong to, and really start to think together as human beings how we are going to rebuild all this connection with the nature that is so much and so critically needed. We're going to start soon with our first chapter, let's say. But just before that, as you saw the video and you've listened to Dania, we have a quick poll to submit, because we would be interested to know if you have seen, actually, you participants and speakers in the room, if any progress has taken place since the last 2 years. So Mirayana, do you want to launch the...
Don't be shy and vote. It's easy answer.
Yeah, and there is no name appearing, so it's all
exactly
anonymous.
We don't tell anyone.
I guess we should have the answers now.
Yeah, quite positive in global. So
yes, a little, I think, is the most voted option.
Can you show us the answers?
yes, I will. Do you see it now?
Yes.
61% think that things are moving a little. I didn't dare adding a question that would be fast enough or not enough, but I think a little says it. Okay, that's very interesting, because we have 93% of the replies that are between yes and a little. So I'll take it as an optimistic reply to the effort that are being made. Thanks, Mireia. We're going to start now, as I was saying. So I will ask our first speaker, François Guerquin, to join. Welcome, François. I guess we're going to see you on screen.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm going to base my speech on a PowerPoint. Let me try to share right now.
Okay, so while you are setting your PowerPoint, I'm just going to say a few words to introduce you. So François has been the new director of Plan Bleu since June 2020. The Plan Bleu is the Activity Center for Environment and Development in the Mediterranean. Earlier in his career, François was appointed Executive Secretary of the United Nations Secretary General's Advisory Board on Water and Sanitation. That's the UNSJAB for those who know it. And he was also the Science Policy Director of the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands. François has an extensive experience on water, on biodiversity and sustainable development at the international level. And as he was saying, he's going to explain how the Mediterranean wetlands restoration is moving on the global map.
Thank you, Chantal. You see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so let's move ahead. So I'm going to speak, of course, from my institutional point of view, so both representing Plan Bleu and the Mediterranean Action Plan of UNEP. So on the global map, I think it's important first to mention that we are now well in the UN decade on ecosystem restoration. So this is, of course, a global movement and a global initiative. What is interesting for us today is how does it apply to Mediterranean wetlands. So UNEP Europe, the office in Geneva, is promoting European restoration flagship projects, and some of them involve the Mediterranean. And in particular, there is a proposal currently drafted for a European flagship restoration initiative project, which will encompass all of Europe's regional seas, meaning both in the north, Baltic, but also Black Sea and Mediterranean Sea. And of course, we are always in this difficulty in the Mediterranean that we are both European and African and Asian, but Mediterranean is definitely a strong element in this project. And as Plan Bleu, we really push for it to cover initiatives and pilot sites both on the northern and the southern shore of the Mediterranean. These programs are unfortunately not focused only on wetlands, but projects within this program can focus on wetlands, and that's what we are trying to push in the Mediterranean. In Plan Bleu, we also think that it's really time to have a number of pilot projects. So we have been looking at how to move ahead with a limited number of sites, and probably it's a small start, but it's important to have such a start so that we can replicate afterwards. So I wanted to mention the WETLANDS initiative, which is an EU-funded project which will restore wetland sites across Europe. There are 15 knowledge sites and 6 action sites. So knowledge sites are sites where some restoration already started, and we can already learn from what has begun. And we have also 6 new action sites so that we can really check how we can make progress on specific sites from the very beginning. Unfortunately, out of all these sites, only 2 are from the Mediterranean, but at least we have 2, so that's important to mention. And really the goal of the project is to lay the foundations for scaling up across much wider areas. Some of the sites are important sites from the Mediterranean. It's Camargue and the Lagoon of Venice. And the goal is to restore around 10,000 hectares of wetlands by 2026. And our role as Plan Bleu is really to look at the governance framework so that we can really use this knowledge for other sites. So in the Mediterranean region, how are wetlands looked at political level? So in the Barcelona Convention, wetlands are specifically mentioned in the Mediterranean Strategy for Sustainable Development, which will go until 2025, but also in the legally binding protocols, both the ICZM protocol and the protocol on specially protected areas and biodiversity. So countries should look at wetlands in the frame of the implementation of the Barcelona Convention. And specifically in the plan of work for this biennium, 2022-2023, there is a specific activity on wetland restoration in the Mediterranean. And the way it's formulated is about identifying innovative actions, capitalizing and promoting application. But there is also a specific activity on one wetland, the Buna Delta, where the Barcelona Convention Secretariat is engaged in elaborating the management plan. So you see at UNEP and international conventions level, there is both a decision in principle to accompany restoration, but also some ground initiatives that are really interesting. I wanted to mention also this new initiative which started last year in 2021, which is called the Mediterranean Model C by 2030. So it's a PAMEX logo because it's in French, and it includes 9 governments from the Mediterranean and 5 major international organizations. There are there are 4 axes. One of them is really targeting preservation of marine and coastal biodiversity in the Mediterranean. And out of 19 actions, 2 of them are of relevance for today's discussion. One about the implementation of specific marine and coastal biodiversity objectives in the Mediterranean. And the second one is about preserving and managing and restoring the Mediterranean coastline. So we may think about this as a new international scheme, which might not get results on the ground. Interestingly, on this one, there is a financing arm which involves major funding agencies from the Mediterranean, such as the Spanish funding agency, the French funding agency, but also private banks and pension funds from the US, for example. And they are in the process of looking at pilot sites, but in a way which is really interesting for us because they want to link restoration and development. And what they call a pilot site might be a region, a watershed. So it's not just looking at one specific and small site, but really looking at a region and how you can get private sector invest in a sustainable way in such a site. And the way the sites are about to be defined is to look at places in the Mediterranean which are in a vicious cycle, which are degrading right now, and where development is threatened by degradation. And the idea is really to have a multi-thematic approach to invest in this sector and see how we can both restore ecosystem and accompany development. So this is what I wanted to underline as initiatives which are taking place right now. As a last point, I would like to mention the advocacy document that we both as a collective partnership have prepared in the last month based on the workshops of the IUCN Congress. And the goal is to guide decision makers at all levels on how to activate the transformation change that we need at all levels of governance. There are a few key messages on mainstreaming wetlands issues in policies and strategies, in building a knowledge base and identifying priority sites. I really urge all of you to read it if you don't know about it, to use it and to help us disseminate it as widely as possible. I think it's an excellent starting point to communicate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francois. Is there a link where this advocacy paper can be found? I understand it's going to be really soon. Gloria?
Not yet. I was writing in the chat that we will be sending this link with the report and the conclusions of the event. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Francois. It was really to the point, and there's a lot of information in what you said, especially the financial part. I will invite you in our session 4 to come and give us a few more details, because I think the various elements you presented from PAMEX could be really a nice way to support this session. So now we are going to move to the next presentation. I'm calling Alessio Satta. Alessio has more than 20 years experience in climate change and sustainable development policies and governance for coastal and marine resource conservation and management in the Mediterranean. Alessio has worked with many different international organizations but more specifically since February 2019. He is the coordinator of MedWet, which is the Med Wetlands Initiative. Someone was speaking, sorry. No, okay. MedWet, for those of you who don't know it, it brings together 27 Mediterranean and peri-Mediterranean countries that are parties to the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands. As we were preparing Alessio's presentation, I found that there is something really interesting, which is that what Alessio was explaining me is that the Mediterranean is also a laboratory for the rest of the world, and in turn an action, an inspiration for action in other parts of the world. Actually, a few days ago, there was a draft resolution submitted by Mediterranean countries to the Ramsar Standing Committee, and the outcomes are particularly interesting, but I let Alessio explain this to us. So welcome, Alessio.
Welcome. Chantal, sorry,
Yes.
it was me speaking because I have a problem with the battery of my computer.
Okay.
And so I need your advice. It says that I have 15 minutes left. So either I do it.
Oh, we're losing an.
I can't do it before an hour.
Okay.
For you to decide.
I think Gloria, can you take care of Anne on a separate channel? Maybe I would suggest if you can connect through your mobile phone, that you do it through your mobile phone, and we will pass the slides.
Okay.
But I let Gloria get in touch with you on this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. And
Okay.
sorry, Alessio. Sorry.
Don't worry.
No problem. We're a big family here. Okay,
Exactly.
Alessio.
Yeah. So first of all, good morning and thank you to all and to the organizers of this event. I'm one of those that reply yes to the question in the sense that since last year, I saw some good improvement in our work, also because of this resolution, among others. And this resolution, it's really, it has been still a collective work. Many people that are here today were involved in this resolution. I see some of them were even in the Ramsar Standing Committee fighting for this resolution, and others work for the preparation of this resolution, for the technical aspects. So I really like this, to say that this is really an outcome of our collective Mediterranean work. And somehow it's also a precise statement of where we are now in terms of positioning wetlands conservation and restoration in the, let's say, global political agenda. And this is, of course, very much related to the wetland climate nexus. We are all very much been working with this climate issue in the last years, both from the mitigation perspective, blue carbon, et cetera, and then on the other side, also with the colleagues of the Wetland-Based Solution project funded by MAVA on the adaptation side. So I really like also the fact that this resolution, this draft resolution, was somehow kind of piece of policy trying to summarize and recap on all these efforts. So just let me give you some elements. First of all, the resolution, draft resolution was submitted by Spain. Only Spain is the current chair of MedWet, but on the behalf of all the 27 contracting parties that are part of MedWet. So this was also already a huge work of negotiation and discussion among countries, and we had some countries that were very much involved in this, and I really appreciate it. And also on the other side, we had also the scientific part of the resolution. We had a strong support coming from the group of coordinated by Dania, by ATC, or by Anis from Tour du Valais and others, and many others from the group of the wetland-based solution, WWF Spain, BirdLife, Wetlands International. So there was really a strong support, technical and scientific support on this. The resolution was discussed in 59 Ramsar Standing Committee, 23 to 27 of May. Maybe also Gordana and Tobias can add some nice stories about the big discussion that was held in Gland in Switzerland. Of course, the final approval of the resolution will happen hopefully in the Ramsar COP14 in China. That will be held in China from the 22nd of November. So we are now in this transitional phase, but where most of the things were already discussed and faced. I just want to point out on three main points that, my opinion, are very are keys of this resolution. The first one is really to affirm the value of wetlands protection, management, restoration as nature-based solution. So this, we know that there is still a discussion, a debate, not only at the scientific, in the academia, but also at the level of international organizations and countries on even the meaning, the definition of nature-based solution. That was something that happened also in Gland, no? The discussion on the definition of nature-based solution. We are affirming here the role of wetland as nature-based solution that we are calling wetland-based solutions, and that are peculiar within, also as Francois introduced it before, is that they are really peculiar in the framework of ecosystem and ecosystem restoration, even in the UN decade. On the other side, we have a strong call to contracting parties about restoring the great wetlands, and to make them as long-term and most effective nature-based solution. And we also wanted to add this specific connection with the climate. We believe that is twofold, of course, that there is a strong interest for contracting parties in including wetlands in their national strategy, both for adaptation and mitigation. And finally, another relevant point, we are here in the EU Green Week, and also the endorsement of the parties to the EU Green Deal, both the EU Green Deal and the EU Biodiversity Strategy 2015. And also this was something, in my opinion, very interesting in terms of recognize also the huge work that the European Union and the European Commission are doing on these topics. I basically think I want to be, very short in terms of slides. So the slides were more than enough.
I have a quick question, Alessio. How was it received? I mean, how did you see this draft resolution was accepted or integrated, let's say, in the preparations to the Ramsar COP?
Yeah, I will distinguish in two levels. This resolution was largely discussed also thanks to the coordination in France and Slovenia and others at the European level. That was discussed at the European level and was very much welcome by all the European contracting partners. I see Tobias raising his hands. And then, of course, there was some discussion, some also resistance that happened in Gland by some countries, but maybe Tobias wants to add some point on it. Please, Tobias.
Yes, maybe, as Alessio said, Gordana Beltran from Slovenia and myself, we participated in the discussions. And I think the positive side, it was very positively received from a number of American countries who think this approach should be global. It's not necessarily has to be limited to the Mediterranean. And that is something maybe which will make its way between now and the COP. So in a way or another. Alessio mentioned a psychological hiccup that there are a few number of countries who don't like the term nature-based solutions because they think that could prevent economic opportunities. And there was a lot of debate, although the United Nations Environmental Assembly has adopted and defined the term and has actually said that nature-based solution is the same than ecosystem-based approaches. So maybe in the negotiations which will come at the Ramsar COP, there can be a way found out to this, but the positive side is certainly that this opens the way and can show other countries outside of the Mediterranean who do agree with this, that this is the way to go. I don't know if Gordana wants to add more.
Gordana?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tobias. I think you summarized it quite well. In fact, it was only one country that was strongly opposing, and even that country was not that sure, but they say they need a bit more time to discuss it. And it's mainly really the positive part of it is that the majority of the countries really see wetlands in this context, and were very supportive to the resolution. And as Tobias said, in fact, they thought it needs to be more global, including also blue carbon, and not just linked to the Mediterranean, but Mediterranean technical annex is still there. And so it also gives a very good example. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's all very good news, and it's always good to see that the reputation, let's say, of being a laboratory that we know for the Mediterranean is not only a reputation, but is also starting to give a lot of results and inspirations to other parts of the planet. Alessio, do you want to add a few words, or are you done?
It's okay. I mean, Tobias and Gordana just told in the best way. So thank you. I mean, we will keep you updated on the story of this resolution.
Okay, thank you, Alessio. I don't know if Anne is still with us. Anne Taylor.
Yes, I'm still here.
Anne Taylor. And Anis, I was calling Anne.
I was just in contact with her.
Yeah.
She will try through her mobile phone.
Okay.
So maybe let us a few minutes, please.
Okay. So in this case, Anne, for our participants, Anne is from the EU Commission, and she was going to update us on what are the latest updates at the EU level. But until she fixes the technical issues she has, I suggest that maybe, Tobias, we go ahead with you. And what you're going to share with you, Tobias, is all this part of the socioeconomic aspects and the key role that socioeconomic indicators have to play when it comes to supporting decision makers and getting them to understand that nature, economies, and people are really connected, and that ensuring that we build a strong restoration, especially through nature-based solutions, means also supporting societies. I'm going to introduce you quickly until your slides are up. So Tobias is a biologist, and he gained his PhD from the Basel University. In 1988, he joined BirdLife International as coordinator of the Migratory Birds Program. And from 1991 to 1996, Tobias was a wetland expert for the European Commission DG Environment. After this, he joined Tour du Valin in project developments until 1999. And since 1999, Tobias is acting as a senior advisor and European coordinator to the Convention on Wetlands. So Tobias, the floor is yours.
Yes, good morning to everybody. I assume you see my screen.
Yes.
At least I do so. Yeah. So now I cannot move forward my slides. Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, that is the next slide. And I hope it will work better. So I think we are all coming out of a situation which was unforeseen and which changed a lot with the COVID-19. And I think we should not forget what was the key word last year, that we need to build back better. There is a dangerous tendency now to go back as we did it before. And that will not be sufficient, that will not be helpful. So we did learn that through the pandemic, and that is summarized in the Global Wetland Outlook, the update, the special edition which we published at the end of last year, what happened in the last 3 years and what others than those from the Convention on Wetlands analyzed, like the IPCC on the climate change aspects, like IPBES, the platform on biodiversity and the services and other situations. So first of all, it is clear that things are linked and that we do need nature for our health. We do need to bring these different aspects together into one health principles. It is obvious that many diseases are waterborne and transported through waters in all different forms, and therefore that this has to be tackled in a sense together, and also that ecosystems, healthy ecosystems, are important for our own well-being. So let's focus on the important aspects, because in our community we often getting a little bit carried away by getting into details, but our main aim is to convince those who are not yet on board, who are not yet with us, and therefore to reach those we need to focus on the dominant factors. The dominant factor still is continuing land use change. It was said before, in the last 50 years, despite the existence of a specific Convention on Wetlands, we have lost another half or even more of the remaining wetlands, which were already few wetlands in 1970s, which remained. So wetland deterioration is still ongoing, increasing. Biodiversity loss continues and has, depending on what you look at, quite an alarming rate. I'm mentioning just insects. And the pollution issues comes up to the global agenda again and will have to be tackled, microplastic, but also other forms of pollution. So clearly wetlands have a major role here to play at the interface of those different aspects. And therefore, I think we need now in earnest to do mainly two things: to inventorize wetlands, and that was very well mentioned also in the video. The video actually, which we showed at the beginning, says all. We could have let that seminar be and just convey the video, but obviously it's a little bit more and more interactive if we are sitting here and speak together. So we have to focus on the valuation. Valuation means economic valuation. It doesn't mean just to put economic values and making everything mercantile, but it does mean that we understand in terms of numbers how much wetlands are worth for us. And we should not be shy in, once we have done this exercise, to take the conclusions, then how do we have to intervene? We should not be shy to intervene into wetlands. This is a picture from, I think, the Albufera de Valencia, which shows that we do need to become active in wetlands also. So what for? It is written here to reduce, wetlands help us to reduce a lot of risks of disasters, floods, droughts, erosion, landslide, etc. and those infrastructure, this nature-based infrastructure can help us to do this. So, and then the next major issue which will be and has to be on the agenda is agriculture. We have to transform agriculture to sustain the world population and wetlands and the natural ecosystems with it, because there is that very close link between water, which comes to us, to our food through wetlands, with water pollution, and that we have a sustainable food production, especially in times like we are living right now, where the global trade is heavily impacted because food cannot be shipped across the world as we would have liked it, and therefore we have to focus more on our own production for our own consumption as far as possible to remain sustainable. So there will be a lot of changes needed across agricultural practices, urban developments, and also wetland management, and that has to come together. And one way to do that are, for instance, the wetland cities. We have at the latest Ramsar COP in Dubai in 2018, there were about 25 or so Ramsar cities globally accredited, and another 20 or so are now in the pipeline for this year's Ramsar COP. The next Ramsar Wetland COP, COP 14. The good news is that it will happen this year, this November. As Alessio already mentioned, it will not be postponed, and therefore we will have an opportunity to meet physically. Some people maybe also online, but the decisions that are needed will be taken later on this year. And then just the last slide may be that an appeal to all of us. We are already quite a varied and diverse community here, and we have support, at least for the Mediterranean, by organizations like the Blue Plan, which Francois was mentioned before, who can be a good broker to bring in other stakeholders, other important stakeholders, like those who finance projects and like those who can develop sustainable but economically viable and interesting projects on the ground. I'm not going to make a lot of examples about specific cases. Francois has mentioned a few of those projects ongoing or in the pipeline. We will hear about others in the Mediterranean afterwards, and that can illustrate probably what I'm saying here in general sense. The picture here is from Lake Ohrid, where you see that this understanding what the different values and the services are and how much they are worth will hopefully bring together the different interest groups and help us to work for more sustainable solutions. So this is, I think, what are the major challenges here. And obviously, we have now the great opportunity through the European Union with their Green Deal and with their upcoming even regulations which have legal power to support this. But with this, I can probably link over to Antella's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tobias. Actually, Anne is dealing with a bit of a technical issue, so I'm afraid we're going to postpone our talk. But I mean, as we've been saying, everything is interlinked and feeding each other when it comes to talking about policy, science, and action on the ground. So I suggest that we move to the session 2, and then we will get Anne back to talk about more policy aspects, let's say, I guess at the latest in an hour or so.
Chantal,
yes?
We have a question from Marco in the chat.
Yeah.
Who says, do these values refer to a specific area? How were they estimated?
Yes, the last slide with the dollar values refers to Lake Ohrid, which is shared between North Macedonia and Albania. And they are coming from a project. I would have to look it up, details, and they have certainly been calculated by economists and the local experts who know what there is in terms of quantities of water, of food, and other values, and also number of tourists, etc. But they have been elaborated according to well-established methods of how to calculate ecosystem services values. This is an approach which is 30 or 40 years old and has become very important with the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, which was, as the name says, published soon after the turn of the millennium. We had it launched, a special one for water and wetlands in 2005 at the Ramsar, the Wetlands COP in Kampala in Uganda. And therefore, I think that the economic valuation methods, there are different methods to do that, which will be combined, are quite robust by now and can easily be undertaken by economists.
Marco, does it answer your question?
Yes, I was writing, but yeah, thanks a lot, Tobias. Very, very interesting. If you should then find a link to this project, I'll be interested, yeah, in seeing it. Thanks.
Okay. Are there any more questions or people raising their hands?
Teresa Hill just raised her hand and also wrote in the chat. I don't know if you, Teresa, you want to say it out loud. What do you? So
okay.
Go ahead.
Hello. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Hi, I'm Teresa Hill from WWF Spain. I completely agree with Tobias that one of the main challenges is transforming agriculture, because it's, at least in the south of Mediterranean Spain, is the main driver for wetlands degradation. But what for me is also a challenge is that the European policies and even the next generation funds are investing quite a lot of money in proportion to agriculture to maintain this intensive industrial agriculture model when we compare with the money invested in restoring wetlands. So that it happens that suddenly you see in the news that the ministry will invest 60 million for wetland restoration, and we must be happy when you realize that the impact that this modernization is going to come to wetlands, I think it's not going to be enough. So I think there is a lot of to do, maybe to transform agriculture policy.
If I may briefly come back. First, great to see Teresa Hill on the screen. We had regular contacts. I think she's perfectly right, and we have the very well-known case of Doñana, the Guadalquivir and Guadiamar estuaries, where the point is we are still too much working in silos, and these two sectors have to work better together and find solutions together. Also, the financing from different ministries obviously need to be coordinated, and between different directorate generals in the European Commission, etc. But the fundamental issue is also that, and that was mentioned in your video, that we have to have a clear understanding on the wetlands and their functioning. And there is a debate ongoing about Doñana, with there are still some misconceptions. And there was a UNESCO mission together with IUCN and Ramsar just before the pandemic in February 2020, which clarified this a little bit, that we understand better the ecosystems and their services. Doñana, for instance, is composed of different wetland ecosystems. There are different aquifers, and there are flood and rainwater and river floods, which do also bring the water to the surface wetland. So based on that understanding and that better understanding, the agriculture can be improved also. And then is obviously, we have to stand firm politically that the laws are adhered to, that the laws are not changed just because some lobbies are pressuring too much for non-sustainable solutions and so on. And I want really to also put on the table here that WWF has been very great since many years in Spain, but also elsewhere in Europe, about the unsustainable fruit production, and the fact that we in Germany or Switzerland or the Netherlands don't necessarily have to eat strawberries all the year through, because that is unsustainable. I'm coming back to saying local food production, with local water resources, not with interbasin transfers, not with overpumping, but let's not think that things are too black. There is the Sustainable Agricultural Initiative, which brings together the food producers, the retailers, and those who transport them, and the whole market chain, which are working and on these issues since many years, and they have been focusing for many years also on Doñana. So it's just to saying there are a lot of things have started already, or those different stakeholders coming together, and that is the real challenge for the coming years, that we don't remain too much stuck into our own silo, but they really find those partners who can help us for our needs. And so, and I have, amongst those who are here, I have also a lot of hopes in, for instance, for the Mediterranean, the Blue Plan, which brings that umbrella vision and make sure that that one can facilitate. But there are many other, I think, around here and the seminar who could contribute to bringing together the different interest groups. Thanks.
Thanks, Tobias. Are there any further comments or questions? Okay, so I suggest, as I was saying, that we get Anne back later on, because she's reaching her office to be able to have a proper connection. And she will give us this missing piece, let's say, of the policy update whenever she can connect. In the meantime, we're going to move to the next session. And as Tobias was speaking about silos, science is also a place where we've been criticizing a lot over the last 10 years that they were working too much in silos. The thing is changing, and not only science is working more and more with decision makers, but also scientists between themselves are connecting more and more and interact with their disciplines. So the format of this second part is going to be more like a round table, because I wanted our different scientists who are going to give us updates to also interact and show how they're working together. I'm going to call Marco Trombetti, Anis Guelmami, and Eleni Fitoka. I'm going to introduce you quickly, and then I will give you the floor and ask you a few questions, and you can also interact between yourselves as we agreed. So Marco Trombetti is environmental scientist and GIS analyst at the ETC UMA. It's the European Topic Center of the University of Malaga in Spain. Marco graduated in forestry and environmental science, and he has a PhD in environmental engineering. His main interest is, because he has more than one interest, but among others, the development of models for ecosystems monitoring and the development of indicators for the assessment of their conditions and evolution. Welcome, Marco. You're with us.
Thank
you
you.
can hear us.
Thank you.
Yes?
Yes, of course.
Okay, we also have Anis with us, Anis Guelmami. He's an environmental engineer, and he's currently working as project leader at the Tour du Vala. Anis has more than 11 years of experience in developing EO. I asked you yesterday what it meant. It's Earth observation, you said, right? So
yes.
Earth observation-based tools, so satellites, I guess, and other tools for the assessment and the monitoring of wetlands all over the Mediterranean basin. And Anis is highly involved in training and supporting national and local wetlands practitioners. That's when we talk about stepping out the silo. And he works a lot on supporting the implementation of such tools with global and local and regional policy frameworks and conventions related to wetlands. Welcome, Anis.
Thank you, Chantal.
And our third speaker is Eleni. Welcome, Eleni, from Greece. Eleni has more than 20 years of experience in inventory monitoring and assessment of wetlands ecosystems. And she works closely with the Greek and Mediterranean authorities and policymakers to support the identification of conservation and protection priorities. Eleni was also the scientific coordinator of the mapping and connectivity assessment of the Balkan Mediterranean wetland during the wet main areas. That's a tough one. Wet main areas Interreg project. So welcome, Eleni.
Thank you, Chantal. Thank you.
So as we were saying, you are working in different areas and you're developing different tools, let's say, but actually all the work you're doing is very complementary. And I would like you to maybe start by telling us what each of you is doing, and then we will get to see how everything is connecting. So I will start with you, Marco. You've worked on the first ever harmonized knowledge base across the whole region on wetlands distribution, extent, and typologies. Could you explain us a little bit what you did and what are the outcomes?
Yes, I prepared a few slides to be more explicative. Can you see the full?
Yes.
Full screen?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So good morning again, everybody. Thanks for giving me the possibility to present you this work we've been developing in the last years. This product, which we call the Mediterranean Wetland Knowledge Base. First of all, I want to say that this work directly connects with the outcomes of and the recommendations from the event of 2 years ago, as you saw in the video and mentioned also by Tobias and Dania. In particular, there was a recommendation to develop the capacity to map and monitor wetlands for the whole area. Also to support the Green Deal and fill evident knowledge gaps. With this in mind, we started the work with the two main objectives. So the first one to be able to map wetlands and their hydroecological extent all over the basin. And the second objective was also to start a biodiversity assessment with the goal to provide an input for decision makers for prioritizing conservation and restoration actions. Few words on the methodology we followed. The main idea of this methodology was to have a collaborative and participatory approach, meaning that we involved and interacted with several institutions and organizations very fruitfully, I would say, also establishing a direct link between different Interreg programs. And we developed different approaches for the northern and southern parts of the basin. This was because of the evident knowledge gaps, knowledge differences about these two areas, so different availabilities of data. Here you see that the main gaps are in the southern part of the basin. Nevertheless, also in the northern part, there are areas which still lack high resolution data. So we were able to map about 160,000 square kilometers of wetlands. Here they are represented at the watershed level. So for each watershed, we have the percentage of extent which is covered by wetlands. In the southern part, you can see wetlands are mainly on the coastal part, while in the northern part of the basin, inland wetlands are also very important. It's very important, though, that the extent of wetlands we found to be almost equal between the northern and the southern part. So all over the basin, the distribution is almost 50-50. I didn't mention that, yeah, we, as a study area, we have all the Med-wet countries. Another result I want to highlight is the possibility to map specific habitats. For the southern part, this can be done also only at a broader scale due to the data limitation. While for the northern part, we are able to map habitats which maybe they are very limited in terms of spatial extent, but they are very important from the ecological point of view. So storing waters or forested wetlands and coastal lagoons. All these data are, of course, the idea is to make them available and usable and share them as much as possible. So we are developing a geoportal web service, which, yeah, I'll share the link later. I'll give you just a few screenshots to show you how the general work, how it works. We structure the data in 3 main levels. So the first one covers the whole area, and we have 3 broad classes, while the second layer for the areas where this information is available gives information on generalized Ramsar classes. So for example, what in the middle you see a wetland which was classified as other wetlands, so quite generic. Here we are able to classify it as inland marsh. And a third level shows information from the original source data. So here we have the highest detail of information available. So the Ramsar type and a detailed wetland description. Here we are in the northeast of Greece. The second part of the work aimed to assess biodiversity. So to give another type of information, which is and the idea was to, again, to exploit existing knowledge, because many times knowledge is there, but is not properly or sufficiently exploited. So in this case, we refer to data from the red list database, and we focused on species which we selected to be endemic or near endemic to the region, related to, of course, to wetlands. So we could select over 1,500 species. And for most of them, we have also special information available. Of the selected species, we found that only 22% have a status of least concern, while almost half are threatened. And very interesting is that is the fact that 2% of the species are already extinct, and more than half of the species were originally restricted to North Africa. In terms of spatial distribution, I said for most of the species we have, luckily we have this information. Here we show the distribution at the level of a sub-basin. So for each sub-basin, we can count the number of endemic and near endemic species. And we can see the share of this species, of this total number of species, which is actually threatened. So we are able to identify what we call hotspots for relative threat to biodiversity. And in this way, we're able to identify clear trends. There are several spots around the region, but I would say the main one, the biggest one, is in the eastern part, for example. So almost half of Turkey and the Middle East. And this might be related to the lack of adequate tools in place to conserve and restore these habitats. This kind of input wants to be of aid to decision makers for planning conservation restoration actions. Of course, the scale is very wide, so there is the need to complement it with information at local and regional level. But for sure, it could be an input for a consultation with local experts. Some conclusions. Well, I think it was clear that further efforts are needed to identify already available data at high resolution and develop new ones, especially in areas which are quite behind in this respect. And this might be also the focus for specific funding actions. Because of this, conservation needs also very differently between countries. Then it's important to remark that this tool aims to be useful for decision makers to identify conservation priorities but also to highlight opportunities for management and collaboration at cross-boundary level. Also, I want to highlight that it's been of support for policy and advocacy work as introduced before by Francois and Alessio. And nevertheless, it's always important to remark the need for further raising of awareness in this area on the wetland ecosystem. Thank you all, and here are the links to the report, which contains all the scientific and technical details of the work, and to the geoportal.
Thank you, Marco. So as said, all the PowerPoints will be sent to participants, so do not worry if you cannot copy paste or use the links now. Anis, in parallel to Marco's work, and maybe if I may, as a complementary approach, you've been running quite a powerful prioritization exercise for the restoration of Mediterranean wetlands. Can you explain us what this tool is and what you've been able to do with the results of your work so far?
Yes, I will start by sharing my screen. I have a few slides to explain.
We can see it, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, basically this work was done in two different ways. I will try to explain them briefly today. So, but before talking about this mapping of potential areas for wetlands restoration at large scale, at the pan-Mediterranean scale, let's start with what we have seen all together earlier. And just to give you some figures and numbers, we have lost almost half of the wetlands, natural wetlands, since the 70s. That was demonstrated by the Mediterranean Wetlands Observatory in the last outlook we have published in 2018. And what are the main drivers that we have identified so far causing this degradation and loss and decrease of in wetland area? So the first direct impact or driver is the conversion, land conversions, mainly into agricultural crop and agricultural lands, but also into artificial wetlands, which is one of the main drivers in affecting natural wetlands. And also in terms of indirect impacts or indirect driver, we have also the water abstraction. So of course, these are linked to for example, if we talk about agricultural development, we talk also about intensive and irrigated agriculture, which consume the 2/3 of the available water resources in the Mediterranean region, especially in the southern and the eastern part of the basin. And you have in the map in the bottom right side, you have this map representing the dots. The proportional dots represents all the dams that have newly built since 1984, and you can see that these dams are really concentrated in areas where we have let's say very high development of irrigated agriculture and intensive agriculture projects. So what we can do after this, let's say, first assessment and evaluation of the status of natural wetlands in the Mediterranean, we can also work on identification or identifying potential areas to restore or to recover some lost wetlands or degraded wetlands. So the first work we've started by mapping the potential wetlands area. So this area represents, just move this. So this area represents the area where we have, according to hydroecological criteria, high probability to find wetland habitats. And based on this map, we can work, for example, on developing a wetlands inventory, what we do usually at national scale or even at the scale of some river basins. But we can also use this map to detect lost wetlands or identify some lost wetlands that have been transformed into other land use categories. You have here Zoom, for example, on southern Albania, where you can see this area called Maliki Marshes, which was drained in the 50s and the 60s, and have been totally transformed into field crop, mainly for cotton production. And this area was a big marsh and a big lake in the past, and could be identified as an area to be restored. And by crossing this information with the current land use, for example, we can even estimate the cost efforts or the estimated efforts to recover some of this wetland habitat, lost wetland habitats. For example, if we have a wetland habitat that have been transformed into agricultural land but not intensively used, the cost will be less, or the efforts will be less than if it has been transformed into intensive agriculture, or even if it has been transformed into built-up area where it will be much costly to recover the wetlands. So we have developed this map for the entire northern part of the Mediterranean basin, from Portugal to Turkey. The work is ongoing for the rest of the basin, and we have calculated based on this assessment, on this first assessment. So it's really an ongoing work, and this assessment is still improved, need to be improved. So based on this assessment, you can see on the right here the percentage of area that could be recovered, that could be restored in terms of wetland habitats, and also could be downscaled at national levels. And the second work done in this direction, I mean, for the identification of potential wetlands to be restored, was conducted by WWF Spain in the framework of the MAVA wetland solution, Mediterranean wetland solution project. And based on this, so the methodology is available, and the report, the methodology and the main results are available in the report. You can also contact Teresa Gil, which is with us today, if you want to have more information about the survey. And there is also an online app that have been developed recently and will be released soon. So the key findings after this work conducted in more than 24 Med-Wet countries, that we have so far identified between 233,000 to 330,000 hectares of wetlands area that could be restored. So either lost or degraded wetlands that could be restored, spread in more than 224 sites in this country, and you have here the distribution of this wetlands habitat that could be restored regarding their geography. So inland wetlands, coastal wetlands, both inland and coastal, and also the distribution among the Med-Wet countries that have been where the survey have been conducted so far. So
thank you
a lot.
Very interesting. And quickly to finish with your different presentations, I will now turn to Eleni. Eleni, besides contributing to the work done by Marco, you also work directly on the ground and at local level. And you're going to share with us the results of some of the research and applications of your research, actually.
Are you going to share the presentation?
The PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's see.
You promised. Okay. Yes, Chantal, you're right, and thank you for giving me the floor by noticing that we have been in close collaboration with Marco and this very interesting endeavor of ETC UMA to create the first ever knowledge base for Mediterranean wetlands. We're happy to see that, we are not happy to see, we are satisfied that the work we did achieved a high accuracy in wetland mapping, and it's amongst the data that are most detailed. And this is also and documentation and argument, a challenge that this work and these tools could be replicable in other regions in Mediterranean and apply them to achieve such detailed accuracies for the wetlands in the whole region. So I'm talking on behalf of the indirect, the partnership of the indirect Balkan Med project, the wet main areas, as you mentioned, which go on to the second slide, which we have presented it in the previous Green Week we organized. It was before 2 years. And we demonstrated the tools and the systems we developed with the use of information and satellite technology. And this the use of satellite technology allowed us to reach such a detail, such a level of detail. As you can see, we have mapped a big number of wetlands in 5 countries: Albania, Greece, Bulgaria, North Macedonia, and Cyprus, and reaches a number of 8,000, almost 9,000 wetland sites and an area of more than 500,000 hectares. Someone can visit, anybody can visit these 2 tools, the GeoPortal and the satellite-based service that monitors the water regime of each of these wetland sites and can extract a big potential of statistics and numbers and for policy and management. Just to remind that the aim of all this effort was mainly to have a very detailed knowledge base on the location and spatial extent of wetlands, and also to have a methodology so as to provide evidences, especially for wetlands that are located outside protected areas that and in fragmented landscapes. That's why we applied the connectivity assessment, that these can function as biodiversity islands. This idea, I think that fits very well with the nature-based solution, which today also is a headline of the discussions. Next, please. Now, next slide, please. Okay. Can you go up? Okay. So after 2 years, Chandal asked me what I could say to this new event for wetlands after 2 years. I say that our current focus should be, and it is trying to be, to use this new unprecedented knowledge for wetlands that has been produced by stakeholders. And so today I will try to give you a few examples, to give you an idea of how so far we have some improvement in protection, restoration, and conservation. Go on, please, in this last second slide. At the beginning of your whole question, I checked little, and I saw that most of the people checked this option, and this is true. And also, I noticed in your video that you have these 3 steps. The second step is to improve the knowledge, and at the case of the Balkan Mediterranean wetlands, it seems that the data sets and the tools are available and adequate. And now, the last step, you also mentioned it in your video, your excellent video, that then we need to integrate stakeholders in this work. So what happened when our Ministry of Environment saw that from our results, there are around, these numbers are only for Greece, that around 1,000 wetland sites out of around 1,500 total wetland sites of Greece are located in unprotected and hostile land. Hostile land means not favorable for biodiversity, like urban areas or agricultural areas. After this this result, the ministry integrated in the prioritized action framework, the new one for 21-27 period, and included funds for the conservation, for actions for conserving these wetland sites, mainly by focusing on further investigation and inventorying of these sites in the field. Next slide, please. Another example, representative example, is that all this scientific documentation of the wetland boundaries that are available on the web by all stakeholders and actors are very often used in environmental impact assessments. On the right, you see a nice wetland within an agricultural landscape. And below, you see also a picture that you have seen many times while you are working with wetlands. This is very often specifically for those wetlands that are not protected, that are drained or vegetation is gone away for sale or for having a road cross on through the wetland. So we noticed that these boundaries, these maps, have been used to document and argue for their relocation of development projects. And this is really very promising use. Next slide, please. This is my third example, and I'm closing my speech. Here you see a piece of the layers that they have been produced in the project. It is for the area of Peloponnesus in Greece. You see in the different colors a different level of protection. With yellow, you see the areas with no protection level. These polygons with lines are the Natura 2000 sites in the area, and this light green layer is the connected areas. You see also these red lines, which actually, just by overlaying our results, the Management Authority of Natura 2000 of Northern Peloponnesus has already started to work on a restoration and rehabilitation plan by viewing what are the main gaps in connectivity and what are the needs that would be focused for restoration and rehabilitation. This is my last slide. Thank you for your attention, and I would be happy to participate in discussions.
Thank you. I mean, that's really interesting. I see that your work is already providing a direct contribution to decision-making processes. Marco and Anis, is it something you've also seen? Has the work you've developed so far reached a point where it allowed for improvement of decisions by regional or local authorities?
Okay, I'll start. Well, our product is very new, so
you need to promote it.
We need to promote it, but no, anyway, it's been already useful for maybe not for direct implementation of restoration and conservation actions yet, but for sure it's been used and it's been very useful for promoting these kind of actions. in terms of the advocacy paper and the resolution submitted to the Ramsar Convention.
Okay, Anish?
Yes, the same from our side. The work is, I mean, it's really new results that we have developed here, and it's still an ongoing project, and the many improvements need to be integrated. However, we have been contacted, I think it was last year, by a representative from the European Commission to show them how it looks like, this kind of results in terms of identification of potential areas for wetlands restoration, and how we can assess these areas at the national scale. And they seem to be very interested by this kind of results. So hopefully we can continue to discuss with them, and maybe we can also have some influence on the European Green Deal. And for other countries, we are also in discussion with some national representatives from Mediterranean countries, like in Tunisia, where we supported the national authority to update their wetlands inventory based on these potential areas, and also based on satellite-based mapping of wetlands, like Elena presented. It's almost the same approach. And yeah, they were also interested by having this kind of information regarding areas to be restored or wetlands to be restored, in order to integrate them in the new national wetland strategy that they are developing. So yeah, it's still ongoing, and we hope we will get more contacts from other countries.
I know that Anne is back with us. I would be curious to hear what you think, Anne, about what we just saw in terms of support to policy work.
Indeed. So sorry again for having been out of battery for a while. Yeah, I mean, as Marco said, all this work was very, very helpful in the preparation of the nature restoration law that we will, hopefully adopt very soon at the Commission level. But it's only the beginning, you know, and therefore that means that we will need to continue. And oops, sorry, I don't know what's going on, but never mind. And so it's only the start of something, but we will have to see how the negotiations with the Council and Parliament will be, because one thing is what the Commission will adopt, the other thing is what Member States will agree upon on the political side. But technically, it's surely very, very relevant. Thanks.
Thanks. By the way, and also because we need to keep with time.
Chantal, if I may,
yes.
Dania has her hand raised.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask, if more people wanted to step in. Just a few minutes, and we are going to go back to Anne with our presentation then. Dania. We're very unlucky with technique today.
We cannot hear you, Dania.
Are you mute?
Do you hear me or not?
Now, yes.
Yes, okay.
Now, yes.
Well, yeah, technology. So it was just to align a little bit the discussion. So it's good that Anne is back, also to reflect a bit on her presentation, how the process has been. So so from the knowledge side, what was presented by Marco has not started alone. It has started through a broad process to align the definitions, the ecological definitions of wetland, guided by the Ramsar through the EU process. And that has taken quite some time. So the process started around 10 years ago, if I'm not wrong, Anne, when we started developing this need to go into an ecological definition of wetlands. And this came from financing from the European Commission of a project that was the seed of all of that. That was we recalled it during our last meeting 2 years ago, and that was really the starting point. So the process has been really long to try to align, more than working on our own at the Mediterranean level, is adopting something that it took a long time to as well agree in this policy, so science policy interface working group that the Commission has created, which was the MAES working group, to align a definition, agree on it, show it to stakeholders at the Commission level, to show it to the countries, and to finally agree that it is worth it to develop a standalone, broad wetland ecosystem map for Europe to guide the process back then for the 2020 biodiversity strategy. And now that is part, as Anne, I think, will be highlighting, of the 2030 somehow uptake and implementation, hopefully a law that will push this mechanism forward. So we used all of this long process in Europe, and we moved it with Mediterranean stakeholders to the Mediterranean. So what is interesting in this process is that we are aligning definitions for the ecological boundaries of wetlands, where the right investments should be taken, the right processes and managements should be taken. So it was just to highlight a little bit that we are not working on different dots. We are really trying to link things together through this community, and certainly with this commitment that the Commission is showing in that, and Ramsar is showing in all of this.
Thank you, Dania. And like nature takes time, processes take time, and it requires to put lots of different levels together. But it's good to see that the process is getting to a certain point. I don't want to frustrate anyone, and I know we said it's great if people can participate a lot, but we also need to keep up with the timing. And I would go back to Anne and move to the presentation that she was going to give on what's taking place at EU level in support of Mediterranean wetlands. And while you are setting up your...
Chantal, if I may, before this, we have also François Gercan and Teresa Gil, who would like to say something.
Okay, I would only ask you to be as short as possible, because I have to be the bad guy and keep with time. So don't make my job too hard, please. François.
Thank you, Chantal. Yeah, just wanted to connect a bit further the dots. I think that we are at a point where we really could see a demonstration at a political level for the Mediterranean, and this is definitely what MAP is there for. So I wanted to mention, when we speak about knowledge base, that in Plan Bleu we have been pushing for a Mediterranean Observatory, which is a long-term project, but which is available now. And of course, our colleagues Anis and Marco know about it because we are already in touch. The idea is to have a portal of portals so that we can share data among different databases and servers. So this is a tool that also allows to superpose data from different players. So you can, for example, use data from the NASA in an agreement with UNEP, and data from what Marco has been presented from ETC-UMA. So the idea is really to allow for multi-thematic approach and analysis in the Mediterranean. I didn't make a demo, and I'm not going to make a demo. We don't have time for that, but I'm available.
Oh, but maybe you can put the link, because you showed me the other day, and it's quite interesting.
What I want to highlight is that the Mediterranean was absent of this UNEP platform, which is a global platform with thematic pages and regional pages. And we managed to get a Mediterranean page, and in Plan Bleu, we are managing it. So it's a portal that also is politically agreed and fully available for all countries. So I think we need to push it as a tool for governments to look at the data. That's the first point. And the second point is that I think now we are mature enough to move to the political level in the Mediterranean. And I really think that we should consider what we are going to prepare for the next COP of the Barcelona Convention, which is by end of 2023. So all these new studies which just come up now are perfectly in time to feed in a political process up to the COP. So I think this community should think about it. And I'm available to discuss about it. I'm very short. Thank you very much.
Thank you, François. Teresa.
Very quickly, Chantal, thank you. It's just to add that, at least for WWF and for most of you, I'm sure, to identify priority areas or wetlands to be restored has to be based on scientific knowledge. And all these maps are great information that should be used by government and decision makers and practitioners. But I think it's important that this information become complemented by citizen science and by the local community. So I think the results from the survey can complement this information, and maybe the overlapping of both maps could also be of great interest, because if you go to restore an area and you know that there are people that they really want to recover, it will be much more easy and maybe a thing for a quickly success.
Okay, thank you. I see there are lots of connections and projects that gather everybody's work, and I think this is surely an interesting step and surely a change in the way science has been working. I really apologize, but I need to move on and close this more scientific, let's say, session and go back to Anne. So Anne, for those of you who don't know you, you are an expert from the biodiversity unit of the DG Environment of the European Commission. You have an extensive experience in European environmental policy, and you've worked at many different levels, from regional to national and European. And you have coordinated the first EU-wide ecosystem assessment to support biodiversity policy. So we would like to hear you back to what we were doing at the beginning of the webinar, looking at how things are moving on the policy side. We would like to hear from you what has happened over the last, say, year and a half. And I think there are quite important and big news coming up. We don't hear you, Anne. I don't know if someone can hear Anne or if it's only me.
No, we cannot hear her.
It seems the screen is maybe we can run the slides.
She's sharing her PPT.
Yeah, that's what is creating the problem, the connection problem.
Okay, I will share her PPT and let's see if we can have her with us again.
Can you hear us?
Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can, but we cannot see Anne, and it seems she's frozen. Is there a way to give her a quick call?
Yes, I will try.
Thank you.
She's come back.
Yeah, she joined again. Let's see.
And can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
But I think it's better that you put the presentation yourself, because it's when I try to share my screen that the whole thing collapse. So
we've done
I'm
this in the meantime. So everything is ready for you to start again.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. And really, apologies. There must be bad karma today with me because since I started, I only had technical problems. But okay, the important thing is that now it seems to work. And first of all, I want to say that I'm very happy to be able to talk to you today, and it's very timely. And so thank you again, Chantal and your team, for inviting Florian and I to this meeting. Last time, Florian Claes from DG Clima gave an exhaustive presentation of all the initiatives which are related in a way or another to wetlands. And so today, so we decided to update this list, because that's very good that you come back to us 2 years after, because policymakers are good to promise things, but are they really serious about it? So we updated it. You will find quite a long list, but today I will go through these slides very quickly and stop on two main initiatives, which is the climate package and LULUCF revision in particular, and the biodiversity and the nature restoration law in particular. So if you put the first slides and then the second. So on wetlands, the next one, on wetlands, as we said last time, there are a lot of initiatives in, if you take the whole commission, which are related to peatland and wetlands, and but of course to various degrees. So surely the CAP is paying a lot of attention to peatlands and wetlands in particular, in the context of climate change and the need to re-wet certain soils which are not so productive, but could be a very powerful mitigation tool, if I can say it like that. And there are financial instruments associated to it. Like the Farm to Fork is calling for carbon farming, which could be an important tool for paying the service provided by this land to private owners and land managers. If we go to the next one, which is biodiversity, where I will stop a bit longer. So indeed, as Dania said, the biodiversity strategy was already calling for nature-based solutions and for the protection and restoration of all ecosystems, including peatlands and wetlands, and to have also some strict protection of these important areas for biodiversity, 10% strict protection out of the 30% protected areas. That is the objective for 2030. The EU-wide ecosystem assessment that Dania was also referring to showed that wetland is certainly the ecosystem in Europe which is in the worst condition, and so that's even if it's not covering a lot of in terms of surface, it's really key for many services and for biodiversity itself in particular. So the biodiversity strategy is also calling for binding restoration targets. And so we have been preparing the nature restoration law for 2 years. And this proposal is proposing some legally binding targets to restore degraded ecosystems, in particular the habitats covered by the Habitats Directive, but also in the wider countryside. There is a lot of focus also on carbon, so the role of ecosystems in sequestering and storing carbons, and there again, wetlands have a key role to play, including also flooding protections and other benefits. A lot of emphasis in this proposal is also put on the need to improve the monitoring of all ecosystems in Europe, the mapping and the knowledge in general. So this proposal was already meant to be adopted by the Commission in March, but then because of the Ukrainian war, it has been postponed, and the date that we are working on is the 22nd of June. But of course, you know, to be confirmed, because with the current situation, it's always difficult to predict. But that's the point, that before the summer, Commission proposal will be adopted. Then, of course, we will start to negotiate with Council and Parliament, and it may take up to 2 or 3 years before the legislation is entering into force. And that will be a tough negotiation. We know that, because there is a lot of appetite for land, for many things, for energy, for biomass, for food, for gray infrastructure. So it would be a very important element to ensure smart land planning. And land planning goes hand in hand with mapping again. And as Dania was very rightly saying, the average, through my experience after 30 years working in the Commission, is that you need 10 years to come from science to policy, for the reasons that Dania very smartly presented, which is, it's not so much about the knowledge itself, it's about the adequacy, or the need to put in adequacy the knowledge into policy definitions, policy standards, policy tools, you know, indicators and so on. So there is a lot of work to be done from science to policy, and that's why the science policy interface will be reinforced in the years to come, thanks to, in particular to the funding of Horizon Europe program, research program. Just to finish on biodiversity, there is also in fact, there are two proposals. One comes from the soil strategy, which was adopted last November. So there is a soil health law in the pipeline under development. And there is also a forest, because the forest strategy was also adopted in 2021. I didn't put it on the slide, but there are wet forests as well, riparian forests, which play an important role as a wetland. And there is a proposal for legislation on forest monitoring, also under development. So quite a lot of initiatives following the Green Deal. Next slide. Now I go to climate, which is the second important pillar that I wanted to update you upon on behalf of Florian today. So an adaptation strategy was adopted last year, which is calling for nature-based solutions and really about preventing risk in the future, because we know there will be more and more risk. And again, the protection and restoration of peatlands is being reinforced under that framework, including carbon farming, as I was saying before. But the big initiative is surely the Fit for 25 package, under which the regulation on land use change and forest, LULUCF, has been revised. And the revision is including refined monitoring and reporting on ecosystems in general and wetlands in particular, including mapping. This is very important. In the future, we want to have better integrated monitoring and reporting from member states on land-related issues. And surely the need to put together biodiversity objective with climate adaptation and mitigation objectives in order to identify in a smart way the land to be protected and restored in that context is of key importance. Peatlands are profiled in the climate policy as maybe limited in terms of area. I think under LULUCF it's estimated at as no more than 3% of the utilized agricultural area, but it's a strong emitter of greenhouse gas if badly managed. And therefore, it's a priority to restore peatlands to decrease emissions of greenhouse gas, and on the contrary, to favor sequestration and storage of carbon. So there are rewetting measures which are foreseen, and rewetting measures of all organic soils, and which they fall under this carbon farming initiative that I was mentioning before, and which may lead, if everything goes well, to CAP support to member states, and also if they put that in their strategic plan, of course, because it's for the member states to decide what measures they want to use from the big menu of the CAP, and also to payment for ecosystem services to private owners and land managers, as I said before. So next slide, please. So that's, we now go to development. Yes, so we also have different initiatives under Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe programs, and including live programs related to wetlands. So to help reinforcing the knowledge base for restoring wetlands in the context of biodiversity and climate policies. Next slide. We will go now to
maybe we can go in detail on the financial instruments.
Yeah, exactly,
in our session,
exactly. So
session 4,
that's why
okay.
Now I'm focusing on policies, as I understood you wanted me to do. And so now we go to economy. So economy again, it's very much about financial session, but just for you to be aware, so there are different initiatives in the Commission, and what we try to do in all these is really to, as Dania was explaining, to use the same or similar definitions of ecosystems, and wetland as one of them, and to use the same, to harmonize concepts really, so that we can then easily relate ecological characteristics to more planning, to the planning authorities, to the finance ministers, to the investors through the taxonomy initiative, to the business, to the ministers of economy. There is a proposal from the Commission also to be adopted in June, if everything goes well, of a revision of the legislation on ecosystem accounting. And the ecosystem accounting will oblige member states to report on ecosystem extent, including wetlands, ecosystem conditions, so the state, and ecosystem services. So that means that this will come into the national accounts of the countries. So, you know, we really, this harmonization of concepts seems sometimes burdensome for scientists, and maybe meaningless sometimes, because it's not purely ecological, but we need to find ways to really mainstream the biodiversity into different policy areas, and in particular the big economic areas, because otherwise it will always remain in the margin. So next slide. I think we are nearly done with the finance and peatlands. So again, these are different opportunities for funding restoration of peatland. And so some I mentioned already, and the CAP, they are also under the cohesion policy, the regional policy, and Interreg in particular, very, very interesting initiatives. We have now Invest EU, following the need to recover from the COVID period. So there we have possibilities to invest for long-term projects, and of course life initiatives. We have, for instance, some very interesting life projects on dedicated to landowners to really help them to restore their land for biodiversity and climate without losing too much, and also a live project on natural capital accounting. The same idea that the benefits from ecosystem restoration, the multiple benefits from restoration could then be taken into account in corporate accounts and reports. So the taxonomy, I also mentioned that there is this regulation on taxonomy, and we have different acts related to that. One on climate, where wetlands is really playing a huge role, but also on environment for objective. And one of them is the protection and restoration of biodiversity and ecosystems. So we are really trying to stimulate green investments in these type of projects. I think I'm nearly done. Yeah. So just to finish, I want to see, because I'm conscious of the time and that you really deserve a coffee break. So
we all do, I think.
So what I wanted to say to finish is that on one hand, the Commission as a whole, and the President in particular, and Vice President Timmermans are really dedicated, committed to maintain the ambition, you know, for securing a sustainable future in the European Union, and therefore looking at measures to ensure a healthy environment, but also food security, feed, natural resources, and so on and so forth. And why I'm saying that, it's because at the same time, I'm very honest with you, we are now more and more facing political reluctance from the member states and from certain sectors to go for more protection and restoration because of the Ukrainian war taken as a reason for the top priority to ensure food security and energy security in particular. We have scientific and factual information demonstrating that you can do everything well without putting any Europe into any food crisis. But of course, to do that, it means that we have to have more integrated policy-making processes, more transparency, and but it's possible to ensure that Europe will be able to reach its climate, biodiversity, food, energy objectives as required by the Green Deal. But it will be tough, I'm honest with you. So thank you very much, and sorry again for all these technical problems.
Thank you, and we made it. That's the most important thing. It makes us forget all the rest. And I know your updates are always very much expected, and thanks for being so clear and showing all the different opportunities that are coming up. As we said, there are financial elements that will be shared in our session. I wouldn't like to close without giving the opportunity maybe to a couple of questions or remarks, but I have to keep it short again. So do we have reactions?
No.
Or questions? I think everybody needs a coffee.
Yeah, we need a break.
So let's do the following. If after the break people feel like they have more energy to ask a question, we can start with this, and then we will move to going to see concrete cases in Spain and in Montenegro. And then we will talk about finance, and then it will come, the time will come to wrap up. So thanks everyone again. Thanks to all our speakers. I personally am learning a lot this morning and getting a lot of updates. And I hope everyone is back in 10 minutes. So that's, let's say 12:22 at the latest, because we need to keep with the time, and I know it's demanding to be such a long time in front of the screen and listening, although we're trying to make it as interactive as possible. So everyone, let's go for a break, and I see you in 10 minutes. Okay, so thanks everyone for being back on time. We will now move to listening a couple of concrete successful restoration cases. But just before that, I would ask Mireia to launch the second poll.
Yes. You have it on the screen.
So we know we have scientists in the room. This question is more to understand if we also have wetland managers and decision makers.
I wait for a few seconds and I will share the results.
Okay.
Not everybody's voting. Don't be shy. Okay, Chantal, I stop the poll and I share the results, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You see it there.
Okay, so that's going to be interesting then for the conversation we can have after we listen to the two presentations. It would be nice to hear from people who work as managers and also taking decisions or making decisions around the wetland restoration. Thank you very much for this. Okay, so as I said, we will listen now to two cases. One is from Spain and one from Montenegro, and we will be happy to take questions after the second presentation. So I will call first Pablo Vera to come to the floor. Pablo is a PhD in biodiversity conservation, and he's focusing on coastal wetlands conservation. It's something he's been doing for the last 12 years. And he's worked mainly in the Albufera de Valencia in Spain. He's been working since 2009 with the Spanish Ornithological Society, which is the BirdLife partner in Spain, on wetland restoration and biodiversity monitoring. And since last year, Pablo is also the technical coordinator for the wetland conservation programs for the municipality of Valencia. That's a very interesting experience you're going to share with us. So I'll give you the floor, and we're all ears.
Thank you, Chantal, and thank you for inviting me to be presenting this in this so interesting webinar. As Chantal has said, I focus in my work in Albufera de Valencia, and we think that there are several experiences made during the last 15 years that could be interesting to be shared with you. So our presentation, as you will see, is about bringing nature back home to Albufera, as Albufera is a very important wetland in Europe, in the Mediterranean, but also a very degraded wetland. So it's very important to develop these restoration activities. So next, please. First of all, for those who don't know about this wetland, Albufera de Valencia is located in the east of Spain. Is a Natura 2000 site by its terrestrial or freshwater habitats, but also it has a marine protected area in front of the terrestrial habitats. So there is a big Natura 2000 site of more than 29,000 hectares. Also, under the regional legislation in the region, it's a natural park, and it's also considered one of the Ramsar sites. I must say, I think Valencia is Ramsar city for the upcoming year. So we are very proud of it. So next, please. Also for describing and for giving a context for the restoration activities, I would say that these are the main threats and pressures that have driven Albufera to a degraded wetland. Most of them are very common to the European scenario, so scarcity and quality of water incomes that are being reduced highly in the past 3 decades. Also farmland intensification, as you can see in the aerial photograph of the lagoon. I forgot to say that Albufera includes a very shallow lagoon and also more than 10,000 hectares of rice fields. So there is no gradient or transition phase between these 2 habitats, and because of the farmland intensification and the occupation of the former lagoon that it was 3 times bigger. Also, this is driving a very big problem, that is the reduction of natural habitats because of this lack of transitional or gradient habitats between the lagoon and the rice fields. In another order of problems, also the disruption of rice farming phenology, as every year farming starts later than the previous one. In fact, this year we are in the beginning of June and the rice fields are still dry and are not dry to start the cropping season. And so, as you will imagine, it's very dramatic to aquatic biodiversity. The lagoon remains with water, but rice fields and many channels and so are dry. All of this means a degradation of bird conservation status. We used to talk about bird because it's the most easy way to talk about biodiversity as a kind of umbrella group of species, but also other freshwater species are not in good status. So next, please. The restoration activities began, I may say, in its conception 15 years ago, and it was made with structural funds from the government of Spain, and it meant the construction of 3 constructed wetlands or green filters dedicated to improve the water quality of entering the system, not to improve all the lagoon, because these areas are relatively small compared to the lagoon, but also to give permanent wetland areas in the rice fields. So as I said before, this is a dramatic problem in Albufera. So they are in a strategic location because they are next to the lagoon. So we gave these gradient habitats, or we increase the marshland habitats. These areas have become biodiversity hotspots in more important way than what it was expected in all the groups studied in invertebrates, birds, of course, vegetation, submerged vegetation, and other species of flora and fauna. It's a very interesting point in these constructed wetlands that are, in most of the cases, there are participative boards to manage these wetlands. They were the construction of them were carried out by the national administration or national agencies, and then the management is made through land stewardship agreements with a national NGO, Wildlife Partners, Save Wildlife, and also a local NGO, and other enterprises that are dedicated to manage the green filters, but in with the focus on conservation of biodiversity. So next, please. After that, there are very few public land on Albufera de Valencia, because almost everything is private because of the rice fields. But there were some land purchases in the beginning of the century, but not restored until very recently. They have followed because of we already had this, may I say, big restored areas of 40 hectares, more or less. And then we have now, in this case of rewilding rice fields, areas relatively small, but in which we are not making a big construction or restoration activity, so only giving nature to come back to the area. I may say that with a kind of objectives to recover some habitats not present. As you can see the photo, for example, these meadows that they were very common 3 centuries ago in Albufera, but they are almost extinct. And we have these restoration activities focusing on recovering ecological functions, for example, having these wet systems with a management focusing, for example, on macroinvertebrate, aquatic macroinvertebrate, to improve the recovery of all the function. These are very interesting initiatives because they have low maintenance costs and are demonstrative experience. As we are working surrounded by private owners that have their own objective of produce a lot of rice, if they see that we are more or less abandoned sites, they will feel angry because of some pest herbs or other problematic species like mallards and moorhens and so on. So we are showing them that these kind of abandoned areas are in fact rewilded areas, focusing on very key species that are also beneficiary for them. So next, please. The outcomes that we have reached with this kind of network of restoration areas is of course the increase in surface of conserved habitats, mainly submerged vegetation habitats and fens. Also, the improvement of conservation status of specialist species, for example, the red-crested poker. We are improving in the sense of we have small areas. We cannot improve the conservation status of all the wetland, but we are seeing that this is the way to recover a general good conservation status for some species, using that experience as demonstrative experience. Also, there is an increase of economical value, considering ecosystem service approach. I think that the constructed wetlands give €9 of ecosystem services value per each euro of investment. So this is a study that was developed some years ago. Also, visitors and awareness raising, that's important. It's more than 15,000 people coming to some of these places, because not all are used for public use. And especially, and I think it's most important, is that also the involvement of society in management through these governance models, for example, like the land stewardship agreements, but also inviting to participate, for example, the fishermen in some fishing monitoring, some enterprises of tourists with boats to come there with visitors, and so on. So next, please. And after this experience, we have detected some challenge, or we are addressing new challenge. The first of all is that we have no more public land available for these big restoration activities, and the rest of private land is very expensive. It's more or less 30,000 euros per hectare as the cheapest. So now we cannot follow up without considering big budgets for doing restoration. Also, we are addressing a problem. We have these next generation funds. There are lots of initiatives to restore habitats and to buy land and restore, but there are no, in our case, I don't know if it's the same in other areas of regions of Europe, but we have very few time to develop this kind of projects. So if we have to find the private owners and to deal with them, to make an agreement and so on, this is a work of a long period. So we are the end of in which we can invest these funds have passed out. So we are trying to find the way to prepare projects, and then we have prepared them to develop with new funds. Also the optimize of restoration, because we have detected that the best way to work now is through rewilding of rice fields, but we have to do in big areas, not in small areas. And also to, as you are seeing in my presentation, this is a kind of network, so we have to improve the network in considering different and complementary objectives for every restored area, so we cannot find some problems as we have detected in some cases of dense dependence, competition between endangered species and so on. So we have to be very cute on finding a complementary plan for each area. And I think that's all. Thank you very much for your attention. I will be glad to answer to any ask you have.
Thank you, Pablo. Really interesting to see how connecting all the actors is absolutely necessary to run such a process. And yes, nature takes time, and we human beings also need time. And I think we often forget this.
Yes.
And I see that there are challenges, but the work is ongoing, and it's quite encouraging. So as I said, we'll take questions at the end. I'm going to call now Alexandra Ivanovic for the second case study. I mean, more than a case study, it's quite a successful experience. So while you're joining, Alexandra, we'll introduce you. Alexandra Ivanovic is a marine biologist and environmental scientist. She has more than 20 years of experience in coastal management and nature protection in Montenegro. She was the head of Sustainable Development Department of Montenegro's public enterprise for coastal management. And she's dealt with many different issues ranging from protected areas to coastal and marine planning, beach management, and water quality, and so on. I know you did a lot of other things, which I'm not telling from your impressive CV, but you have all the freedom to comment more on your background, Alexandra. What I think is interesting in this experience is that you explained me how small steps can lead to great results. And it would be nice to hear what you've been doing with this restoration of the Tivat wetland. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I was thinking today when we saw this movie at the beginning, how all the goals for restoration of wetlands are already defined and clear. We know that there was a saying that we should cooperate with the local stakeholder to raise awareness among public, share the experience, but still, you know, in practice, cases differ from one to another. Some are successful, some are not. And I always wonder, what are those things that make a difference among cases, and what is that makes it a successful story? The story of Tivat wetlands started very rough, and for a long time we did not believe it's going to be a successful story. And still, I might admit that it was recognized as a successful story by others, not by us, because we are aware that we still have lots of steps to do and a lot to go, but I think it's worth sharing. This area was protected by national law in 2008 as a special nature reserve. And in 2013, it was enlisted on Ramsar list of wetlands of international importance. However, only in 2013, public enterprise for coastal zone management was entitled to manage this area. So after the protection for several years, the area on site was not protected at all. And the good thing is, and one first step that kind of helped us to start working is a very good cooperation among a local NGO that actually initiated the protection, municipality of Tivat that was also eager to start working on this restoration, and also the tourist organization of Tivat. So with this informal partnership, we started with small steps. And this last year, yes, Corona area always mixes my years around. Last year, the municipality of Tivat and tourist organization nominated the story of restoration of this nature reserve as a successful story, and we received the Green Destination Award in the category of nature and ecotourism. So I guess recognition of these small steps are sharing. And then also in the recent research in Montenegro, this area is also recognized as a potential Natura 2000 site. We can move to the next slide. So this area is about 150 hectares of the coastal lagoon, and it was used in the past by local inhabitants as agricultural land and land for salt production. It's situated in Boka Kotorska Bay in Tivat municipality. The last time the area was used, it was during 60s years of the last century, where there was a project in place for 3 to 5 years for industrial production of salt. This project was functioning for 2 years. They produced salt in 2 years, but due to financing, the whole project was stopped. So after those years, this area was completely deserted. And of course, it became a site for illegal dump of wastewater. It became a very favorable hunting ground and also fishing ground. So when we came, these are the first pictures where we started to do some field work. We spent almost 2 years just clearing all the waste from the land. The interesting thing is that also in this area, there are remains of cultural heritage. We have this road that passes through the wetland that is from the period of Austro-Hungarian Empire in this area. And there's also remains of the salt works that are infrastructure for the salt works that are still in the area. So basically, we had some infrastructure with 12 bridges that we had to repair in order to actually start using this area. So our company devoted funds for restoration, for infrastructure restoration, and we restored these walking path. We created 2,500 meters of walking and bicycling path within this area. Posted some information boards, bird watching towers, and some small information point at the entrance of the area. But the first thing that we wanted to do is to put the gate at the beginning to stop the illegal dumping in the area. And after we built this gate, the next morning the gate was gone. And this was the first, I can say, conflict at that time we had with the local community and the people who were living around using this area for whatever they seemed they should. And another conflict we had with people who use this ground for hunting. So we then realized that these are the peoples we have to work with. So basically what we did, we hired also international expertise, because in Montenegro, we did not have any expertise in management of such areas. We hired a colleague from Slovenia who worked on the similar cases in Slovenia, and he was helping us going to the local communities, talking to local people, and trying to explain to them that we just want to improve this place and that they will have a benefit from what we plan to do. Because, you know, usually they think that the protection means they cannot approach to the land. And I must say that there's a lot of the land is still privately owned in this area. And slowly, step by step, we start moving toward good cooperation with them. And then after they felt, they saw what we did, we just repaired this path and they can come and join, they start cooperating with us. And we had experiences like people from our neighbors, they're coming for walks with children to the park, saying that it was the first time they visit this area and it's in their neighborhood. Then we had very valuable stories of how this area was used before from older people. They shared pictures with us, and this was all valuable information for us to know what to do in restoration, but also in which way to promote this area. So after a few years, we even requested a study to study the cultural heritage of the area. We nominated this area to also be protected in Montenegro as a area of cultural heritage. We can move to the next slide. So over the time, another thing that helped us a lot in our work is the promotion and awareness raising of this area in our work. Here also we had help with local media and tourist organization, but also the NGO that are dealing with children education and bird watching. So we had a daily visit of school children, teaching them about habitats, about birds. Our area for the last few years became a stop for the nature tours of the elementary schools that from north. Usually when they come to the coastal part, they always stop and visit, and we give of course free tours and explanations. But also Solila became famous in the region for bird watchers. So they would, over the fall and autumn, sometimes even during the winter, they would come and stop there with visiting of Ultin Salina, which is much greater wetland area. Solila somehow became a part of their bird watching tour of Montenegro. Another Another success that we find is that 3 years ago, we have a sighting of nesting of hemantopus birds, which is a kind of a indicative bird of good wetland conditions. So this is something that we find as a success of our management and restoration work. And another thing that was helping us also promote the area is that after over 30 years, this area was again visited by three flamingos that have a regular population in Ulcin Salina, which is on the south of Montenegro, but they start returning for short visits to Tivat Salina, which we found as another confirmation of a good management of the area, and they find this area still again safe for their visit. And that this also helped us in promotion of the area. So we had the increased visits because flamingos are popular birds also among children. But this all helped promote this area and also promote the value of wetlands and nature protection, protected nature areas. What was important is that Tivat Salina now is a part of a regular tourist promotion of local hotels, tourist organizations, tourist agencies. It's on the way to Luštica Peninsula, so we have a lot of guests stop by and visit. And through some EU-funded projects, we are now working on improving the tourist infrastructure, and soon we hope we will be able to share with them also birdwatching equipment and some other tourist information so they can enjoy the area better. And next slide, please. Yes. So basically, what are the our learned lessons and challenges in the past? We, as we said, that we find out that the cooperation with the local stakeholders was the key for the success of this story. Also, this use of local knowledge and tradition also created this tight bond with the locals, and this was basically a major step toward the next activities for the restoration. We still have to do some restoration of the part that is not underwater. We do have to do some studies and projects to do mechanical restoration, and for that it is very important to have funds. Restoring nature is an expensive job, and it is for that sense we have it is very important to also have a financial and also decision-making support for those works. And also for us, the key was the promotion, education, and awareness raising, first on the local level, and then it became even raised on the regional level. So this will be a short presentation. I'm here for all your questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Very inspiring. You mentioned tradition. One term I like to use is heritage. I think we all need to remember that we have especially in the Mediterranean, we have quite a strong heritage, and it's a very powerful argument for people to get into making sure the resources are here for the future generations, I think. Yes, I think we have two people from the two participants who want to react to these presentations.
Yes, Dania raised her hand before, and then Magdalena. So please, Dania.
Yes, no, thank you for both presentations. I think it's important to feature some efforts that are going in the right direction. So with Pablo, certainly we have been working since quite some years among this community of projects in showing that the willingness from the local actors has been something very important for your case. I'm impressed by the amount of resources that you mentioned, Pablo, 8 million, if I'm not wrong, to restore certain aspects. And the point comes also, and I think it links to what Alexandra was finalizing her presentation with. That's mainly this long-term, the sustainability of financing. I mean, I think from your experience, you have gone into many processes, and I'm understanding that you have already like a stable mechanism to support management in terms of financing. Maybe you can highlight a little bit what made it in your case, because I think it's one of the main aspects that from our last meeting, it was kept, and it is still a big challenge in the whole region.
Yes, I agree. Stable financing is the key for any nature restoration. We in Montenegro say we are lucky. We are a public enterprise for coastal zone management in Montenegro. It's a specific state-owned. It's not an agency. It's more like a functioning like a company. But what we do by law, we rent the beaches in 6 coastal municipalities. And the funds that we raise from beach renting goes to our budget that is by law should be reinvested into maintenance, upkeep, and protection of the coast. So our company has an annual budget of around 6 million euros that is not going to the budget of municipality of the state. It stays in the company and it's reinvested next year by a plan that is adopted by the government. And this plan should include the management of the coastal infrastructure, but also nature protection. So this is the basic investment. Over the last year, we devoted from 50 to 100,000 euros for the management of Tivat Salina. It is not something that can be probably allocated by other smaller institutions in Montenegro, I'm talking. And then after a while, this was important for our starting of activities. Now, of course, we can apply for project and we do have some other donations, but at the beginning, in order to do something, yes, it is very important to have stable finances. But the stable financing also needs support from decision making and from the political level, because once you have a change in this political level, policy level, political, yeah, should I say political? I mean, those people who are decision makers, they should recognize that nature protection and restoration of wetland is important. This is not always the case. So I can say we were lucky in time, we were lucky with decision makers, and we were lucky with the funds that we had available at the beginning to start the work.
Thank you. Sorry, but we need to keep up with time. So I see 2 more hands raised. If you could keep it short, that would be great. And I'm sorry, because we will have to move to our last session after these 2 questions.
Excuse me, Chantal, it's only to give a point.
Sure, Pablo, apologies.
Because of the question. It's correct. The number was 8 million euros of investment. In that moment, Spain was in an economic crisis, and there were lots of money dedicated to infrastructures and so on. And the people who was in charge of the natural park and so on have the ability to sell to the governments that this kind of activities were very important for the accomplishment of the framework directive, water framework directive, floods directive, and so on, and to sell also as nature-based solutions when very few people were talking about nature-based solutions. And it was a high amount of money because it comprised the land buy, the buy of land, and also the restoration. But now we have the experience that there is no need of a big restoration project, as I was talking in my presentation. Only giving nature a place to return softly, giving a direction, it's enough. So I think we don't need a big money. If we have a lot of money, we will do a lot of things, but cheaper than we did.
Okay, that's a very good point. We can go back to it in our session on financing nature-based solutions, because this is quite a critical time for this. Magdalena.
Thank you. So I will keep it brief. Thank you for your presentations, both Alexandra and Pablo. I think they're very inspiring examples of stakeholder engagement in wetland restoration. And I'm very happy that this was such a big part of your project. I would just briefly like to ask, Alexandra mentioned there was an initial conflict with local communities who had other ideas on what restoration is, and you had an external expert from Slovenia, and then you also did a study where you collected local stories and photographs and learned about local heritage. So I would like to know to which extent have these lessons and this knowledge of local heritage and local knowledge, how did they impact the further course of the project? Did they change something in your planning? Did they, what effect did they have?
Well, actually, it had a great effect. First of all, when we started working, we did not have many information about this area. There was not many studies, and we basically what we had is a study when it was preparation of the proclamation with some very brief information about also about biodiversity, but also cultural heritage. And but when we came to the field, it was a hunting ground, it was dumping ground, and we didn't know where to go, which direction to go. So there are stories about what the road was used, what the channels were used, that people were, planting vineyards in the area, helped us on to make this plan on how to do the restoration. Also talks about from fishermen where this fish is moving through, which channels, help us to see which channel should we restore first and things like that. So it turned out to be a very important cooperation with them, and their experience and about salt production, clay dredging. There's so many different layers in this area. And on the other side, they felt very important that their stories are heard, and that we are hearing their suggestions. So also created this bond on feeling that we are working together.
Thank you. Shall we take a question of Marianne, and then we move on?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, my video is not working. So I wanted to thank you very much for these last two presentations. I have also a question for Alexandra about the same issue of local participatory approaches and how the local people are now understanding the economic and well-being benefit of the restoration of the area, and to what extent they are involved in the management process of the restoration. Because as you know, there are many cases where we understand that the developing local ownership is absolutely fundamental to develop this, the success of restoration initiative. So I wanted to know more about how the local people, local stakeholders are involved in the restoration process in itself and the management of the area. Thank you.
Well, a lot of land in this Solila Nature Reserve is privately owned. So for every activity that we are working, that we want to do on the local land, we have to ask for their permission. Sometimes it's not a successful story, sometimes it is. At the moment, what we did was working on the state-owned land. But as Pablo was saying, that this process of purchasing of privately owned land, it's going to come to our agenda very soon, because the restoration of the northern part of the wetland will need to include some work on the privately owned land. But on the other side, people in the area, that are mostly they are landowners in the Solel area, now are working in the tourism sector. They all have small restaurants, hotels, some renting of the places. And after we restored this area, and of course, I should say that the entrance is free and the gates are always open because the land is mostly private. This area improved also their tourist offer. So they always suggest to their guests that in the evening they can come to the reserve and relax and have a nice walk and things. So I think this cooperation and involvement of them came slow and step by step. Still, it is informal. We plan to make this council among us and the landowners to be some kind of official body, but sometimes I think informal cooperation gives better results than not necessarily creating some official body that not necessarily can be successful or not. But what we see, and another thing is that staff that we hired to work in the area is from the local community. So they feel they have a part into the management of the area.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so I know we could keep going, and I know this is where the change happens. So there's always a lot to learn from these experiences from the ground. We need to talk about another important topic, which is money. and would invite you all to join this, let's say, fourth part of the webinar, which is about how do we finance nature-based solutions. Surely in this room, there are people with experience on how they've done. We've heard a few examples, but I suggest that you share with us what you think about, according to you, the way to finance nature-based solutions should be. And I have a few guiding questions if people cannot or don't want to take the floor. I don't know if Anne is back because I didn't forget to give her the possibility to answer a few questions, but I don't see her. I see her chair is empty. So I hope she didn't fall on the floor. Okay, so I mean, are there any participants who have experience or want to share reflections on how you see the best way to get funds to finance wetland restoration, let's say from an NBS perspective? I know it means involving a lot of different actors, a lot of different levels. It can be promoting an economic opportunity. It can be creating jobs. So surely there are many different ways to look for funds and show that this is going to contribute not only to nature, but also to the people.
If I may, Chantal?
Yes.
Yes, I saw quickly in the presentation of Anne that she would like to highlight so a few funding programs from the European Commission. And here we are also representing the Interact Med program as community. So I think that Interact Med is a good example for this. And I think that we can also consider other programs such as Horizon Europe with specific calls for this on climate and also on environment, and more precisely linked with the Mediterranean Sea. There is now a mission on Restore Our Oceans and Waters mission. So these are two examples, and we can also consider the LIFE program as another funding program to consider to develop this kind of projects to foster the NBS implementation in the Mediterranean. I don't know if other participants would like to share their points of view.
I would be curious to hear about private funds because as we see, working with a nature-based solutions approach means, of course, getting the national governments or international levels to support financially, but it's also a community issue and a community story. So how do we manage to also involve more and more the private sector? I know you're working on this, Marianne. Do you want to say a few words?
Yes, I think it's quite difficult. It's quite difficult because the private sector, they need to justify very practical outcomes, and especially for wetlands, the most obvious outcome is carbon sequestration, and this is quite difficult to measure for the time being. I hope it will improve in the future, but for many companies, it is more, for the time being, it is more forest restoration than wetlands restoration. So we need.
I've seen a comment on this indeed.
Yes, I think we need to upgrade the importance of restoration as a fantastic nature-based solution for carbon sequestration and climate change mitigation. And there's still a lot of progress to be done at the international level, especially at the climate change, the UN climate change framework, to really develop the public awareness of policy decision makers on the crucial importance of wetland restoration for climate change mitigation. But for the companies, there's still a lot of work to do to convince them, I think.
Thank you. Anyone wants to react to this? Luis, as a donor, I don't know if you are with us, but as you're working for the Mava Foundation, I think it could be interesting to hear your perspective from a donor on the approaches that nature-based solutions that are maybe more complex mechanisms are going to require or are requiring already. You need to unmute.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, just to provide some more inputs, I think that the discussions we are seeing is that the easier and most traditional way to contribute financially is to look for public funds. And so we could see the importance of the presentation of Anne Teller with all these European Union's funds that can be available for the restoration of wetlands. From our side, of course, the experience is to provide funds from philanthropy. So this can be also, of course, a good source of funding. And foundations like MAVA that are very focused on conservation of biodiversity and ecosystems, of course, we invested a lot. As you maybe know, or most of the people here, we are just closing our activity, so it will stop as philanthropy from our side, but other foundations could be interested. But also what we can note from the previous presentations is the involvement of stakeholders and how large is the extent of private land and threats in these ecosystems. So, of course, and we are also preparing some documents according to our experience with other sectors on how the private sector could be involved in financing these nature-based solutions or the restoration of ecosystems. And this is quite important. In my view, it would be a bit of naive thinking that private companies would pay for this restoration. But the involvement of stakeholders and the establishment of funds and compliance with environmental and social responsibility of companies could play a role there to complement the public funding. So I don't think that there is a magic solution for this, but the combination of several mechanisms and involving the private sectors and efficient involvement also of stakeholders all together could be a solution for many sites.
Thanks, Luis. Anyone wants to react to this?
So yeah, if I may, I mean, certainly the scope needs to open not only to public funding, and certainly there is more and more need that the private sector is aware of that, and there is willingness to invest for long term. Certainly, we don't have arguments for the very short term, especially for the wetlands. I mean, if it comes to the capacity to absorb carbon, that's a long-term setting that's normally goes much more beyond the short-term benefits. But certainly, what I think is very much needed. Also working since a long time on trying to find financial schemes within somehow the natural or the environmental protection side of the financing schemes. I think we need to move beyond that, and as we are hearing, I mean, it's something that affects each and every, or better saying, each and every sector affects this ecosystem. Also in terms of climate, right? There is a benefit to restore these ecosystems. So I think what I have realized across these long years is that whatever mechanism we are using to ensure that there is, more conservation, more protection, more restoration, the level of financing is much lower than any activity that links to sectoral activities. So I think it's time to move as well whenever we are trying to find financing instruments to work from the sectoral side of them. So how can we, from the climate share of investments, ensure nature-based solutions? How can we, from the, greening the agricultural sectors, work on some restoration? I think that will be the way where we could expand somehow the financing possibilities towards this investment, and not only to focus on what we want to conserve, what we want to protect strictly for biodiversity. I think that could help also, I mean, in these slides that I saw for the public funding themselves, I mean, all these life and things like that, that should come from different angles. So it ensures a little bit more funding to target some ecosystem services benefits in this nature-based solution prioritization, I think.
Thank you. I see that Sophia also shared some examples, if you want to check the chat. Gordana, you were raising your hand?
Yes, thank you. I just did it physically.
Okay.
No,
I caught you.
Yeah, great, thank you. I was just now listening to the last two interventions, and then also thinking back what Anne presented. And from my experience, I would say, yes, you can, or put it this way, it's really difficult to get private sector to invest, really. They would prefer to have the money from the public sector to do their work more likely than really investing in. But you will find exceptions as well. But I think if we want to engage stakeholders, private sector more, then we also need to stress and really put wetlands in different programs, long-term plans, legislation explicitly. Like we have forests or agriculture or different other land uses, if you have it explicitly written, you will then have more chance to raise awareness, you know, because otherwise it's just part of biodiversity and it's just part of a big box. So if you really want to focus on wetlands, I think it's really needed to really work a lot on awareness raising and really explicitly say what is the importance of wetlands. Thank you.
Thank you. I know we could keep going with this interesting and sometimes painful conversation, but we need to move towards the end. I hope everybody is still okay. We're all getting hungry, I think. But before we close and we listen to Dania giving us the conclusions, I would like to invite a speaker, Teresa Vicente. Teresa is working on an initiative which is currently taking place in Spain. And if it is successful, as I understand it's going to be, it will be a first in Europe. Teresa is from the University of Murcia in Spain. She's professor of philosophy of law, also deputy director of the Center for Cooperation and Development Studies of the University of Murcia. She's also the chair, the director of the chair of human rights and rights for nature at the same university. And she has specifically researched on the new models of ecological justice and the rights for nature. And in this context, since 2019, she has been the promoter of the popular legislative initiative in Murcia, that is in Spain, as I was saying, that seeks to give a legal personality to the Mar Menor Lagoon and its basin. So Teresa, we've entitled your speech, "The Mar Menor, First Ecosystem in Europe with a Legal Status," with a question mark. I would be curious to hear more about this and how it could be an inspiring way of approaching conservation.
Okay, thank you very much to invite me to be with you this morning. Now I am in Venezia, and it's a good news to say you that we get the Venezia agreement to protect the wetland and specific the turbas, peatland.
Congratulations, wow.
And we have been in a Chile pavilion in the Bienal of Venezia talking about wetland, peatland, and the specific protection that this value ecosystem needs. And then our lagoon, Mar Menor Lagoon, is our subject now. It's a wetland, but also we have humedales. Humedales is the Spanish word to peatland or similar. And then we get, we try, but we are near to get it, right for this ecosystem. The Mar Menor Lagoon that integrate just the lagoon and the basin, where is another water ecosystem like humedales, and then we are together stronger now. If you don't mind, because Chantal asked me about that, I can speak in Spanish because I have a short time. And then, like you have in English, just the presentation, then perhaps I can tell you in Spanish another interesting words, if you don't mind. What do you say?
Do you want that we translate what you say?
Yeah.
We have Sonsoles with us, so I would ask you to maybe give a few short sentences, then once Sonsoles can translate, and then we keep going like this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then, este nuevo modelo jurídico, económico y político y cultural de otorgar derechos propios a los ecosistemas con gran valor y ecológico y en peligro, viene de un nuevo modelo de justicia, que es la justicia ecológica.
Maybe Sonsoles, you want to translate?
I will try. Teresa was mentioning this this new model, this new political model provides rights to ecologically valuable systems, which is a new modality, let's say. Sorry, I'm not trained to be an interpreter, but I'll try to summarize. Thank you.
Okay, if you prefer, I can speak in English. What do you prefer? I don't know.
Oh, keep going in Spanish, and I can also give a hand if needed.
Okay, okay. Then si en el siglo XIX tuvimos el modelo de la justicia liberal que le dio derechos a un grupo de personas, los hombres blancos y con dinero, excluyendo a otros grupos de personas como las mujeres, los niños, los pueblos indígenas y los que no tenían dinero, y le dio derechos a un grupo de personas y a las corporaciones, a las fundaciones y a las entidades mercantiles, en el siglo XX llegó otro modelo de justicia que es la justicia social, que le dio derechos a las personas excluidas, mujeres, niños y pueblos indígenas. Y en el siglo XXI, la ecología nos dice que hay otro error, que las personas no estamos separadas de la naturaleza y necesitamos un paradigma nuevo con el que compartir la vida y los derechos, ya no con todos los seres humanos, que el genoma en el siglo XX nos ha dicho que somos iguales, sino con todas las entidades no vivas que forman parte de la vida.
Okay, we'll stop here and listen to...
Okay, yes, summarizing, I think that Teresa was highlighting the evolution of the social models that exist. So in the 19th century, the model gave, let's say, preponderance to the wide reach population somehow with limited rights. Over the 20th century, however, this model was changing and the right was being provided to foundations, merchant societies and other actors, including women. And on the 20th century, we finally discovered that there's a new social justice-based model that needs to connect people and nature and ecology being at the basis as we are all somehow connected. Hope I translate. Yeah, okay.
Teresa?
We cannot hear you, Teresa.
I hope we didn't lose her. Wow.
You need to unmute.
Can we unmute her?
A new...
Yes.
Yeah.
Ahora sí.
Ahora sí? I can't. Can you?
Yes, we can hear you. You can move to the next slide.
Okay. Then this model that is coming from the new paradigm of ecological justice to get right for nature, at the beginning now, in this moment, is just to get right for ecosystem in very danger. Español. Entonces, nosotros lo hemos puesto en práctica con la laguna del Mar Menor, porque es un ecosistema muy valioso para el Mediterráneo, para Europa y para el mundo, y que está en peligro de muerte. Sonsoles, if you want.
Yes, Teresa, I think you summarized already in your first sentence. But basically the idea is that in Mar Menor, you're trying to apply this new socially just system based on ecology, because the Mar Menor is a very valuable ecosystem, not only in Spain, but at a global level.
Yeah. Ecological justice is a new model of justice in base of social justice, but one step more. They are different models, but one after the other one. And then the new things for ecological justice is give right, subject right to the ecosystem in danger. Okay. Then, este es el Mar Menor. Okay. This is the Mar Menor Lagoon. This is the Mediterranean Sea. And you can see this area and have a lot of. Next picture. Okay. Then the problem with Mar Menor is that for near 40 years, the Mar Menor for the politics and for law is like one resort, no one vital entity. And then in my region, the economy system and the development, el desarrollo económico de la región donde está el Mar Menor, ha pensado que el Mar Menor es un objeto para obtener beneficios. Ha sido dañado primero por la minería, luego por un modelo urbanístico desaforado. Este era el principio. Ahora la manga del Mar Menor, que es esta línea de arena que separa la laguna del Mediterráneo, está lleno de edificios, lleno. Después, ahora el gran problema es un nuevo modelo de agricultura, que es la agricultura intensiva y la ganadería intensiva, sobre todo de cerdos. Esto es lo que está matando a la laguna, porque la región de Murcia es una zona semidesértica. Entonces no tenemos agua y ahora pretende ser el centro de producir vegetales y frutas para toda Europa. Por tanto, ha sobreexplotado el ecosistema y todos los nitratos de esa nueva agricultura y esa nueva ganadería va al Mar Menor y lo asfixia.
Okay, I think you set the scene very clearly. Sonsoles, do you want to quickly translate? Then let's see how this can change.
Yeah, I think that Teresa was explaining that the economic development model used in the past considered the area as an object itself, and it has suffered from over exploitation, initially from mining, but also from an not controlled development model with lots of construction around that area. The new model now building up that has been based also on intensive agriculture and pig farming has also involved a bit of a disaster in this semi-desertic area where they're lacking water, and it's therefore very difficult to grow vegetables and fruits for the rest of Europe as they were planning initially. So this has also caused the eutrophication, yeah, exactly, sorry about that, of the water there due to agricultural practices. So this makes the Mar Menor terribly endangered of these pressures.
Okay, so what did you do and what are the results? I would switch to the next one. Exactly.
When it's disaster that just the fish came, like you have seen in the other picture, cuando la gente vio que los peces salían a suicidarse a las orillas de la playa, la gente sintió que estaban matando una parte de nuestro cuerpo físico y de nuestra identidad cultural, y salieron a gritar que querían defender la vida del Mar Menor por encima de todo. Esta foto es en el Parlamento español. En el centro está la ministra de Medio Ambiente. Nosotros fuimos y presentamos una iniciativa legislativa popular que está dentro de nuestra Constitución, del artículo 87.3, y que permite que los ciudadanos propongamos una ley al Congreso.
Okay, quick translation, because we're already beyond.
Yes, thank you. Teresa was explaining that this situation led to the actual fish jumping out of the mud and committing suicide, which made the people in the area realize how this was affecting themselves and took action to do this. Therefore, they prepared a new figure, contemplated by Article 87.1 of the Spanish Constitution, and prepared a legislative proposal that was taken to Parliament, as it can be seen in the photo shown on the screen.
Okay.
And then
next slide.
Yeah. Era muy difícil porque teníamos que conseguir más de 500.000 firmas en el periodo de COVID. Nosotros, sin un duro, sin que nadie nos ayudara y con el COVID, fuimos hasta el presidente del gobierno a pedir que firmara. Conseguimos no 500.000, 639.286 firmas antes de conseguir los 3 meses que nos dio el gobierno por las difíciles circunstancias. No lo necesitamos. Y fuimos a Madrid con esta cantidad de firmas y con la sirena del Mar Menor, que se vino con nosotros.
Okay, I think that is quite well explained in the slide, but basically in the period they had allocated to collect the signatures necessary to make this legislative proposal feasible, they collected not only 500,000 signatures, but 639,286. And they went to Madrid also to talk to the Spanish Prime Minister to make him sign this proposal. This was done without any financial support, but they finally were very pleased to see that even not reaching the 3 months of deadline, they had managed to achieve more than they initially were requested to.
Now we are in the Congress and all the party except one box say yes. Then you can see 265 from different party on the right, on the center, on the left say yes. And only 52 say no, is box is the right. And then
extreme right wing.
Yeah. And then Unit Nation called us, oh, you are with us in the Harmony with Nature program, because we get, before go to the parliament, we get the popular initiative in a little town near Mar Menor, but then the Asamblea in the Murcia say no, then we went to Spain. Then the Unit Nation came with us.
Oh, okay, I will translate briefly. In the previous screen, we saw the number of votes that were implemented in Parliament, that most of the political parties in Spain voted yes, except for one extreme right party that said no. This approach was actually appreciated by the United Nations as well in the program Harmony with Nature. And I think she stopped there, or I lost the sound there.
Yeah, we lost you, Teresa. Really inspiring example, and a really interesting story that should all make us feel that we should never lose hope and keep acting. So I think it's a really nice way for us to close this event. I'm really sorry because we're running late with time, and I would like to give the floor to Dania for the conclusions, and then we will need to break for lunch, I guess. So Dania, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you everyone, and thank you, Teresa. It was on a short-term notice, but I think it was worth it to show an example and to end this event with a positive note that even, not very obvious moves can be done if there is a willingness. So that's really, to me as well, very inspiring. Very well. So I hope, sorry for taking a little bit time. It was a rich event as the previous one. I hope it was useful for everyone. What I can just highlight very quickly as take-home messages, and mainly in 2 years' time, I think we showed that some move has happened in terms of ensuring ways to go in the right direction when it comes to wetlands, and at least to pave a better way for them in the future. So there has been actually quite some knowledge development at different levels that I think its next step is to join efforts. And I think Teresa from WWF Spain tackled this very nicely. I think the efforts presented by Marco, Anis, and I think it was
Eleni.
Sorry?
Eleni.
And Eleni, exactly, sorry for that. And Eleni should really come together because it's improving the baseline knowledge that we have set and to take it a step further to guide processes. So certainly there is quite some work that still needs to be done at that level. And Eleni showed again as well how this knowledge has helped them tackle also at the policy level and the practice level in Greece in terms of improving ways to conserve and to restore wetlands. So that should be really a way to take that a bit further. Then I think what came as well as an important thing when it comes to these different efforts in pushing a bit processes for change. I think that the MedWet has shown like this common effort that was done towards raising an important resolution to the Ramsar has really been a very good step and has been even, I understood, an example maybe that other regions in the world can benefit from. So that's certainly very positive. What else? At the policy level, I think we heard quite some interesting, hopefully positive policies that will be implemented, that are already being implemented, some of them, to push for a more restoration, more targeted and across sectors. So Anne went and explained a bit how many levels wetland is included in not only in the DG Klima, but also in the DG Environment, but also she mentioned the economy and peatlands as one example of adding it to other sectors, mainly for us, I mean, when it comes to wetlands, the agricultural sector. So certainly, I think if well implemented, that could be something that would help this degradation at least to be reduced in the future. When it comes to possible future partnerships, I think certainly connecting people towards improving the knowledge is one very important part of what needs to happen, transferring prior knowledge and lessons learned. I think we heard very interesting lessons that could be easily transferred to other sites at local level. From the two presentations, raising capacities, certainly we heard from Montenegro that they did not have the capacities but had the willingness. So certainly raising capacities by exchanging between these actors in the Mediterranean is very important. Developing foundations for long-term sustainability of their management is very important. I think there's lots to learn from there. Engaging local communities in the decisions and the practices across the cycle of management is very important, and we heard very good examples on that. And certainly transforming ways through changing legislation. I think this is really inspiring, and it is shown that it can be done. I think it's about replicating that and moving in a fast phase. So that could be replicated across other countries, because certainly the legislation is a very important tool that we need to use to ensure that all these sectors around wetland ecosystems can be working together more effectively to reduce the pressures on them. I think that's it from my side. I hope that it was useful, and sorry for taking a bit more time. To you, Chantal.
Thank you, Dania. Anne, I see you're back. But we're closing. So thanks, Dania. A few practical steps. So as said, you will receive in the next few days a follow-up email with the links to the replay, the PowerPoints, key links and material related to what was discussed today. I see that Gloria has put a link to a satisfaction survey. It will also be sent to you by email, and it would be nice if you could complete this survey. It's always very helpful and important for the MBPC. And one last thing before we leave, because I know everybody probably like me wants to go for lunch, is that it would be nice if we could all turn on the cameras and we take a picture as a memory of this event. So thanks everyone. Thanks to all the speakers. As usual, it's always too short, but I think we've managed anyway to get quite interesting and important content. So have a nice weekend and we'll be in touch.
Thank you all. I'm taking the picture. Don't leave. Okay.
Let's not move.
Don't move and don't leave. I need to take another one. Wait a second. Wait. It's not that easy. Okay. Perfect. Thank you all.
Thanks everyone, really.
Thank you.
We
have
thank
a lovely
you.
weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah.